Chapter 2060. It's almost done. Looking at the broken Tokyo, Dustless removed Kinsusanu with no expression. Kinsusanu took a few steps casually, and the ground shook. Especially the Kansusanu released by Dustless was even more powerful. The surface within tens of kilometers was affected by the aftermath. It's over. After looking around, Dustless removed the mighty Kansusanu, and his cold eyes were like a cold wind, sweeping over the few people who were struggling to survive. Surrender quickly, or I will kill him. Perceiving that Dustless landed, Ha grabbed Takatsuki Sen's neck in an instant, and the kagun on his back turned into a sharp sword, pointing at Takatsuki Sen's throat, which was enough to easily cut her throat and destroy her life in an instant. Ha ha! Naive. Threatening me only proves that you have exhausted your abilities. Seeing this, Dustless just grinned and immediately ignored Ha's warning and walked slowly. Your warning demonstration is meaningless. If you want to die more comfortably, you can kill yourselves collectively. As Wu Chan walked over slowly, he reminded leisurely, the person I value is in front of me. If you can really kill her, it means that you're strong enough to ascend to the heavens. You think I don't dare? Ba was infuriated by Dustless's words until smoke was coming out of his 7 orifices. He said in a cold voice, quickly surrender. Don't challenge my bottom line. This kind of person is also a scourge in this world. Best to kill him. The store manager, Yoshimura Kozen, was unexpectedly silent. He didn't even look at Takatsuki-san, but just stared at Dustless, and his face was gloomy from time to time. The clerk of the antique coffee shop died tragically. What was left in Yoshimura Kozen's heart was simply revenge. It's not that you don't dare. Dustless shook his head, staring at the kagun sword that had been close to Takatsuki-san, and explained softly, your speed is too slow. In the short moment when you are about to kill her, you will die before Takatsuki Sr., Dustless said lazily and casually, looking straight at Ha. His tone contained great confidence and calmness. You forced me to do this. Hearing the words, Ha was furious, and the dense kagun on his back all shot to Takatsuki-sen's neck. Anyway, according to the previous plan, Takatsuki-san will definitely die. Arima Kisho also agreed with this approach. After all, it was a powerful ghoul of the SSS class, and it was extremely dangerous. Shoo! Takatsuki-san closed her eyes. In a trance, she had already seen the miserable death of her body separated from her head. Boom! It was also at this moment that a deafening commotion broke through the horizon. The entire world seemed to be in a golden river, sparkling with starlight. It's dazzling. Even if her eyes were closed, Takatsuki-san could feel the warmth of the sharp edge. It was warm, like being in the center of the sun, but it was not as hot as the sun. All in all, it was very warm, and people could not help but want to put down the guard in their hearts. Under curiosity, Takatsuki-san subconsciously opened her eyes. Who is it? She didn't know if she didn't see it. After opening her eyes, what came in her eyes was the light. The speed was extremely fast, and it flashed away. It seemed that the distance of thousands of miles was just a moment. Go to hell. Ha's face was ferocious, and the scarlet kagun jumped with unknown, killing intent. Puchi! The light cut through the fatal kagun, and the flash cut it off at the moment when Takatsuki-san was killed. Buzz. Then, the light gathered and condensed, and in the blink of an eye, it turned into a vague figure. The messy black short hair was dancing with the wind. The back was very thin, and the figure was not very tall, but witnessing the attack of the dark red thick kagun, it was fearless, and it gave people a very stable and trustworthy feeling. This guy? Why is his speed so fast? Ha was shocked. Not only him, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen also opened their mouths, and their eyes were filled with unconcealable astonishment. Why is he so fast? Because I am the Flash who ate the Flash fruit. Dustless shrugged, and his face was indifferent. The indifferent face with this lazy tone was full of contempt and ridicule. So arrogant. I don't know if you will still be so arrogant after your head is minced. Ha sneered. The kagun on his back was like 100 flowers blooming, A large number of thick Kagun were like blood-red pythons, biting Dustless ruthlessly. Dustless did not avoid it. Takatsuki-san was behind him. Facing the sharp edge, there was no way to avoid it. Of course, there was no need to avoid it. Pucci, the sharp edge, shining with cold light, jumping with the halo of death, easily pierced Dustless's head. Suddenly the light shone, and a large number of photons erupted from his head. This is seeing that Dustless's head did not spray out brain juice. I could not help but be stunned. This guy's blood is golden. Arima Kisho asked in surprise. His eyes were fixed, and he was also stunned. He subconsciously thought that Dustless's blood was golden. This must be a new type of ghoul that had never been seen before. Idiot. Dustless, whose old head was inserted with Kagun, suddenly opened his mouth. Endless sneers spread to the sky. I am immortal, immune to all physical attacks at the beginning. This is an unequal war. Phew. At the same time, Dustless looked cold, his arm shook slightly, and the Kusanagi sword was compressed in the blink of an eye, and then the golden sword swept out. Pucci. Compared with Dustless, Ha's speed was too slow as a turtle. Even if he realized Dustless's attack, the speed of his body was still too slow, and he was hit hard. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2061. Gulu Gulu. Blood flowed quickly from Batsu's chest. The speed was fast, like a rapid stream. It seemed that all the blood in Batsu's body would flow out. Batsu clenched his teeth. His distorted face looked like he was in pain. However, this guy deserved to be a ghoul whose strength surpassed the SS class. He just closed his mouth and didn't speak. He looked quite tough. His sharp eyes stared at Dustless. He couldn't wait to peel off his skin and pull out his bones. Really fragile. Reaction. Really slow. Dustless's contemptuous tone, like a thorn, deeply hurt Batsu's self-esteem. His painful face suddenly became ferocious. Everyone had self-esteem. Ouch! Hysterical screams came out from his mouth, full of blood. Batsu's eyes were scarlet, jumping with unknown murderous intent. His eyes bulged, which was particularly terrifying. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, a large number of Kagun on his back once again swept over. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Not only Batsu launched an attack, but even Arima Kisho also launched an attack. He released Kunk, and the weird weapon shot a large number of golden lightning energy balls. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. Not only these two people, even the store manager Yoshimura Gakusen also shook the Kagun behind his back. Suddenly, countless needle-like bone darts were shot out. It was similar to the feathers of birds, but the strange thing was that it was harder and sharper than the steel sword. Seeing this, Takatsuki's son laughed, but her haggard face was slightly miserable and lonely, and her laughter was also miserable. If one day his biological father pointed his sword at him, no matter who it was, he would definitely be hit hard. Dustless naturally would not wait for death. A dangerous halo jumped in his eyes, and violent energy fluctuations burst out. With Dustless and Takatsuki-san as the center, a perfect defense circle was formed, isolating all attacks. Shinra Tensei. Dustless roared, and a transparent air cover suddenly appeared around his body. Bang, bang, bang. The incoming attacks collapsed one after another. Attacked by the repulsive force, all of them were shattered. Moreover, because Bailey was too close to Dustless, he suffered a fatal blow in an instant. Pucci. He was already severely injured to begin with. Now that he was struck by the repulsive force, he spurted out a mouthful of blood. Then, he was sent flying, lying on the ground half dead. Swish! Swish! The dangerous sound of breaking through the air galloped over. Dustless turned his head and saw that it was a dense ball of thunder and lightning. Arima Kisho? Dustless smiled knowingly as he stared at the bespectacled, white-haired man. Immediately, his eyes looked directly at the golden energy ball that was attacking him. With a flick of his finger, an even more terrifying light beam whizzed out. Dow Breaker 88 flying dragon strikes the thief. Boom, boom, boom. A sharp roar resounded through the sky. The blue sky was covered by the thick beam of energy. It majestically pounced towards the energy ball that had a great momentum but was actually as small as a raindrop. It turned out to be the blue sky. Because Dustless's move was too exaggerated, the sky also turned into the same beautiful color as the 88th Dowbreaker. Everyone held their breath. Seeing that the two were about to collide violently, everyone widened their eyes. It should be able to offset it, right? Looking at the thick laser beam that covered the sky, Arima Kisho lowered his head and guessed. His hands that were holding Ku's hands were already sweaty. However, ideals were often beautiful, but reality was extremely cruel. There was no so-called offset. What was even more shocking was that the situation turned out to be one-sided. Pucci, Arima Kisho shot a large number of golden lightning balls through Ku, like a piece of ragged clothes that hadn't been worn for many years. The 88th Dowbreaker easily shattered and scattered with the wind like goose feathers. Boom! Under the attack of the 88th Dowbreaker, the void trembled and the scattered lightning balls finally disappeared. They burst open like fragile water droplets, turned into starlight all over the sky, and quietly left the field. So fragile, Arima Kisho was stunned. He suddenly felt that his brain wasn't enough. What was the beginning? He was so fragile, and his move was easily defeated. That's how fragile you are. Otherwise, do you think you're so strong? Dustless smiled and didn't say anything. He stared at the stunned Arima Kisho. This guy thinks too highly of himself. Does he really think he's invincible? Of course, in terms of the power system of this world, Arima Kisho was indeed a predator standing at the top of the food chain. But this time, it was a pity that he chose the wrong enemy. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. The energy beam that covered the sky continued to move forward unscrupulously, distorting the sky and tearing the vast earth apart. Boom, boom, boom. It wasn't until several mountains a few hundred meters away were smashed into pieces that they finally stopped. So strong, everyone stared at the distant sky, dumbfounded. Even though they were a few hundred meters away, the terrifying explosion caused by the energy beam blasting the mountains could be clearly felt. Under such an unprecedented attack, the word escape had completely lost its meaning. At this moment, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gyozen could feel the violent vibration even though they were a few hundred meters away. The shock wave of the explosion even pushed their bodies back constantly. I'm not his opponent. Realizing the difference in strength, Arima Kisho smiled bitterly. If this continues, it's better to surrender as soon as possible. Anyway, it's just asking for humiliation. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2062. It's not that Arima Kisho and others are idiots, but the enemy is too powerful. Invulnerable strength, enough to be immune to all physical attacks. In the face of such an enemy, anyone will have a headache. The odds of winning are pitiful. After a little estimation of the odds of winning between the enemy and himself, Arima Kisho helplessly found that once they fight, the odds of winning on their side seems to be zero. That is to say, no matter how they fight, even if Dustless stands and lets them attack, the final victory or defeat belongs to Dustless. After all, the ability of elementalization is too powerful. Even if Dustless stands still, it is enough to exhaust Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Kozen. Scared? Just now, the appearance of the two of you having victory in your grasp, I'll never forget it for the rest of my life. Dustless mocked eccentrically. Dustless stepped forward lazily. Approaching an inch closer, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Kozen would retreat a few meters away, so that they have a sense of security. When facing Dustless, the two of them did not have the slightest bit of courage. They only retreated instinctively, almost developing a panic attack. It's not a good idea to keep retreating. The pace suddenly stopped. Yoshimura Kozen's face was full of anger, and his red eyes were also dotted with endless coldness. Shio. His back trembled slightly, and a large number of hard objects similar to needles whistled out, shooting out like raindrops. Let's start with you. The eagle's eyes stared at the store owner, Yoshimura Kozen. Dustless stared intently. His deep black eyes were as terrible as the abyss, flowing with cold hostility. As for the sharp objects that were shot head-on, Dustless didn't even look at them, as if they didn't exist, and continued to move forward. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Without the slightest escape, Dustless's body was penetrated one by one. His head, abdomen, 2 pairs of legs, 2 arms, and 2 eyes were penetrated by the sharp objects. If it was an ordinary person, naturally, he would be dead. But Dustless, God is really unfair. Why is there such a monster alive? What kind of stupid things did we ghouls do to make people angry? Seeing Dustless showing this ability again, the wounds recovered in an instant. Yoshimura Kozen couldn't help but complain. This monster-like existence really violated the law of biological evolution. To some extent, he has broken away from the category of human beings and become a creature in another field. Arima Kisho's tone was full of resentment, and it gave people the feeling that he was complaining. There is no way. Any creature has its fragile side. After several setbacks, even a strong person's character will change. Xiao. Wu Chen's body was like air. Even if they could hit him, they couldn't hurt him. He continued to walk over slowly with a calm expression. I can't beat him. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen both felt powerless. The two looked at each other and wanted to retreat. As long as there is life, there is no need to worry about firewood. Such a shallow truth is known by the world, not to mention Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gongsun. If he knew that he was going to die for sure, yet he still courted death without fear of death. Wasn't this an idiotic behavior? Retreat. With a sudden shout, Arima Kisho's body turned into a burst of light and disappeared. Kozen Yoshimura was stunned for a moment. After noticing that Arima Kisho had disappeared, his mouth twitched and he quickly slipped away. Bastard, don't run. Seeing such a scene, Ba was so depressed that he almost vomited blood. His body had been shattered by Dustless. He wanted to run, but he was powerless. Doubt Breaker 90, Black Coffin. A cold voice suddenly descended. The half-dead Ba felt his entire body turn cold, as if he had been targeted by some kind of natural disaster. He subconsciously raised his head to look at the horizon. Bastard, I will not forgive you even if I become a ghost. Seeing countless black, cold lights falling from the depths of the void, after yelling, Ba's body was instantly fragmented. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The invisible black blade had no substance, but it was real. It was impossible to guard against it. It easily penetrated Ba's body and dismembered him like minced meat. How powerful is the recovery ability of ghouls? It's like this, you can't recover. Glancing at the dead Ba lightly, Dustless looked straight into the distance. Even if Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gongsun had escaped, under the perception of observation hockey, Dustless still clearly felt their movements. Phew! Photons filled the sky, and a violent sound of breaking through the air fell. Following that, Dustless also disappeared without a trace. In front of the light, hundreds of thousands of miles were just a short distance. I finally escaped from that devil boy. Hiding under the dark ruins, Yoshimura Gongsun breathed heavily, turned his head, and glanced behind him. After noticing that there was no movement, he was relieved. Hurry up! Without much rest, Yoshimura Gongsun chose to continue running. There was no other reason. Dustless was too dangerous. However, at this time, a sudden change occurred. Phew! Yoshimura Kozen raised his head and saw a ray of deadly golden light sweeping toward him. It was extremely tricky and aimed at his neck. Kakaka! His right foot suddenly stepped on the ground. The surface suddenly collapsed, and Yoshimura Gongsun decisively retreated. Too slow. The indifferent tone was like a machine, without emotion, the deadly dangerous light. The speed was faster and more ferocious. Poochie. In the end, Yoshimura Gongsun was still hit by the big move. The arc of hot cold light tore his chest, and blood flowed. Light speed kick. Looking at the opportunity, Dustless jumped up with his right foot and hit Yoshimura Gongsuen's face with all his strength. The powerful force directly shattered the one-eyed mask on his face. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus chapters, 3,000 rewards plus chapters, 1,000 evaluation votes plus chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus chapters. Chapter 2063. Ka. Receiving a fatal and ruthless blow, the one-eyed mask on Yoshimura's face suddenly collapsed, revealing his true face. His haggard cheeks were particularly hesitant and full of confusion about the future. Although Yoshimura always warned himself to be strong, he was also frightened by Dustless's strength. The gap between the two sides was too big. Boom, boom, boom. The light exploded, and the hot storm covered his whole body. Yoshimura's whole body was swallowed and occupied by the fire, and the high temperature burned everything. It's so hot. In the huge fire, Yoshimura's painful scream could be heard, and only people with good eyesight could see it. Because the power of the lightspeed kick was too fierce, the Kagun on Yoshimura's back was quickly burned out. He was originally in the state of Kakuja, and his whole body was surrounded by Kagun, but the temperature of the lightspeed kick was too high, and Yoshimura in the flame could not withstand the high temperature and was quickly melted. Phew. At the same time, there was a sharp sound from his back again. You dare to come back? Turning his head, Dustless found that the person who came into his sight was Arima Kisho, who was holding Kunk in his hand. Boom, boom, boom. The energy ball, which was the size of a human head, crackled and rattled. Its power was extraordinary, and it was accompanied by a scorching light. Its meaning was similar to the light speed kick. Not only was its power astonishing, but it was also accompanied by an extremely high temperature. Didn't I say before that I am a flash person who ate the glint fruit? All physical attacks don't work on me. Wu-chan shook his head slightly and looked straight at the incoming energy ball. He stood still and didn't even try to hide. He just stood there quietly. Boom, boom, boom. In the end, several dangerous golden energy balls all blasted on Dustless's body, annihilating him in the flame. Boom, boom, boom. A violent explosion swept from Dustless's body, and his body was suddenly blown apart, scattered, but there was no bleeding. Good opportunity. His eyes narrowed slightly, and Arima Kisho rushed quickly. Phew. Arima Kisho's body was like a stream of light, rushing over at a high speed, crossing layers of space and maximizing the speed of his life. However, the strange thing was that Arima Kisho thought that he would take the opportunity to attack Dustless. After all, it was a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity. It would be unreasonable if he didn't attack. But the strange thing was that Arima Kisho didn't hesitate at all when he walked past him. And the target was Yoshimura Kozii, who was tormented by the flames. Leave now. Holding Yoshimura Gyozen's body, Arima Kisho retreated at full speed. His original intention was to save Yoshimura Gyozen. After all, this old guy's combat power was extraordinary. If he died, it would be a pity. Arima Kisho would not be able to support himself. I understand. Yoshimura Gakusen glanced at Arima Kisho and immediately left with his help. You two are leaving just like that. At this moment, a chilling sound suddenly came from behind. It was like a cold wind. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen both shuddered. At least leave something behind. Dustless narrowed his eyes and focused on Yoshimura Gakusen's body. For example, the things inside the body. Run. Hearing this, Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen both sped up to leave. The wind under their feet was like a gust of wind, disappearing into the sky. Stupid. You exposed your back to the enemy. If I don't kill you, even God will not forgive me. Dustless shook his head and sighed, calmly raising his right arm. Kakaka. The golden energy ball condensed in an instant, and the straightened thumb swallowed the photons in the vacuum. Laser. The straight laser finally shot out. It was obviously hundreds of meters away from Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen, but the light was still so fast that it approached the two in an instant. Puchi. The terrifying edge penetrated Yoshimura Gakusen's body, leaving a fist-sized mark in his heart, and his body was instantly penetrated. Since he was an enemy, Dustless naturally would not be merciful. This old man was very stubborn. He was delusional to think that ghouls and humans could coexist. It was incredible. If ghouls wanted to live, they must eat human flesh, and humans naturally did not want to be eaten. Even the corpse was no exception. Therefore, the two sides were destined to be unable to reconcile. Put on. His heart was destroyed. Yoshimura Gakusen naturally entered the end of his life. The strength of his body was lost in an instant. He even did not pay attention and fell to the ground. Is this the end? Yoshimura Gakusen, who was lying on the ground, looked at the sky in confusion. In his eyes, there was regret. If he could stand on Dustless's side at the beginning, he would not fall into such a miserable situation. Everything was entirely his own fault, and he could not blame others. This is bad. Glancing at the wound on the store manager's chest, Arima Kisho suddenly knew that the old man was finished. It was impossible to save him, and he would definitely die. His heart was destroyed, and even his internal organs were erased. It was impossible to save him. You go. His turbid eyes glanced at Arima Kisho, and Yoshimura Gakusen said in a deep voice, I have already come here. I can stay here to delay time for you. Whoosh! Who would have thought that when these words just fell, a dazzling light fell from the sky? Pucci! The golden light cover on Yoshimura Gakusen's body seemed to carry thousands of gravity, and his body was crushed in an instant. It's funny, an old man wants to delay me. In the light beam that fell before, there was a disdainful tone, and then Dustless, who looked as usual, came out and stared at Arima Kisho intently. At this point, you're the only one left. Go to the underworld and accompany them. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2064. It seems that I have to end it here today. Staring at Dustless's calm cheeks, Arima Kisho smiled sadly. I've been a ghoul investigator for so many years, but I didn't expect to end up so ridiculous, being chased like a stray dog. There's something wrong with what you're saying. Hearing this, Dustless just shook his head and said calmly, It's not that I want to chase you, but you blocked my way. Really? Arima Kisho murmured and immediately raised the strange coo again. Phew! The golden light swept to the front, followed by the high-density thunderball roaring out. Boom! The powerful energy ball blasted onto Dustless's body, blasting his body into smithereens. The photons that spurted out piled up all over the sky. Is it like this again? Arima Kisho smiled bitterly. His hand loosened. Kunk in his right arm almost fell, and his mood was frustrated and sad. Buzz! There was an inexplicable energy ripple in the void, and the photons that burst open immediately gathered again, gradually turning into a human's mentality. Arima Kisho, you should kill yourself. Glancing at Arima Kisho faintly, Dustless's body used elementalization to recover quickly. The gap between us is really different. You don't want me to do it. That's right. Hearing this, Arima Kisho didn't comment, looked at Dustless, and finally nodded. As Dustless said, in any case, Arima Kisho can't defeat Dustless, and he can't even hit the real body. Is it necessary to continue? Even if Dustless doesn't move his body, Arima Kisho will die sooner or later. If you commit suicide, you can still keep your body intact. Pointing to the body of Yoshimura Gyozen, Dustless kindly persuaded, See, you don't know what's good for you. Looking at the place where Dustless's finger pointed, Yoshimura Gyozen's body had collapsed and turned into a large pool of blood and debris about the size of sand. There was no bones left. Farewell. Immediately, under Dustless's indifferent gaze, Arima Kisho picked up Ku in his hand again, but this time he didn't take the initiative to attack Dustless, but aimed at his own neck. At least you know your place. Upon seeing this scene, Dustless finally heaved a sigh of relief. His eyes involuntarily drooped as he thought in his heart, We have wasted enough time. It is almost time. However, at this moment, Dustless's contemplation came to an abrupt end. He suddenly discovered that a tall shadow had covered him, revealing an endless, gloomy, and cold aura in front of him. Out of curiosity, Dustless looked up and his pupils suddenly froze. Die. Arima Kisho was as silent as a ghost. He approached Dustless quietly, and the big sword that he held tightly whistled down. Looking at the falling Ku, dumbfounded. Dustless noticed the extraordinariness and was really surprised. He wasn't surprised by Arima Kisho's strength. No matter what kind of Ku was, it was garbage and slag to Dustless. What was surprising was that Dustless smelled something unusual from this Ku. It seems to be the same Kagun as the Yoshimura store manager, and the smell is somewhat similar. Slightly sniffing, a unique, bloody smell suddenly entered his nostrils, and it was somewhat similar to the smell of the Yoshimura store manager before. Could it be? Thinking back, Dustless suddenly thought of something, but it was too late. Pucci! The blood-red katana fell from the sky, cutting half of Dustless's body and directly cutting him in half. At the moment of death, Dustless's eyes were wide open, full of disbelief, as if he was unwilling to die. You are too careless. The indifferent tone, with a bit of ridicule, suddenly sounded. Arima Kisho's mouth squirmed, and he said to himself, 10 years ago, I participated in the war of encirclement and suppression of Owl, tore off his arms, and made him into an SSS class Owl. Speaking of this, Arima Kisho's calm tone had a hint of pride. At the age of 19, Arima Kisho was already a second-class search. He fought with the SSS class Owl, Yoshimura Gakusen. He cut off the arms of Owl and successfully defeated Owl. This battle became one of his heroic deeds and let him rise 2 levels in a row. You can die under its edge. You can close your eyes in the netherworld. Glancing at the blood-red katana in his hand, Arima Kisho sighed in a low voice, and then turned away without looking at Dustless. Phew! At the moment of turning around, a cold wind suddenly came from behind. Looking up at the sky, the vast sky was covered with a layer of dark clouds. Strange, Arima Kisho murmured and muttered in his heart. It was fine just now. Why did the wind suddenly blow? Out of curiosity, Arima Kisho looked back. His eyes instantly solidified, and he was full of rare panic and helplessness. So fast. Even if Arima Kisho had realized the danger and retreated at the first time, it was still too late. The golden katana had crushed his body. Pucci! Just like the scene just now, Arima Kisho's body was split into 2 halves and separated from his eyes. How is this possible? The short 5 words are the last sentence of Arima Kisho in the world. He was full of doubts until he died. Who killed him? Hi. A lazy voice suddenly sounded, following the source. It was Dustless, who was safe and sound. I really don't understand why you idiots are so proud. Shaking his head, he glanced at Arima Kisho's body with pity. The Dustless that this guy killed was just transformed by Jinjutsu. Farewell, it's time to leave this world. Gently glancing at Arima Kisho's body, Dustless's body disappeared under the blue sky. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2065. Arima Kisho and Yoshimura Gakusen were dead. Dustless naturally had no need to continue to stay. It also meant that the trip to this world was about to end, and it was time to leave. Are they all dead? So fast. Takatsuki's son, who came, looked at Arima Kisho, and her eyes widened. Her dull eyes looked quite dull. Arima Kisho's strength was beyond doubt, and he was extremely powerful, but now only Dustless continued to stand, indicating that Arima Kisho was dead. Arima Kisho, glancing at Takatsuki's son, Dustless pointed to the 2 halves of the body on the ground and apologized. I'm sorry, I used too much strength and split the guy into 2 halves. Dustless shrugged and made a very innocent expression, but Takatsuki's son rolled her eyes. She absolutely did not believe what Dustless said. It was absolutely nonsense. Dustless hated Arima Kisho and his people. He wished that they would all die. If there was a plan, he would definitely kill them. Although it was an accident, it was normal to split Arima Kisho alive. It was very suitable for Dustless's style of doing things. Hearing this, Takatsuki-sen's mouth twitched twice. Looking at Arima Kisho, who was unwilling to die and still had his eyes open, she could only mourn for him slowly in her heart. "Where is my father? No, where's the old man?" Mentioning her father, Takatsuki-sen's tone was obviously low. Her mouth was cold, and her pupils were flowing with raging cold light. "This guy." Dustless glanced at Takatsuki-san and asked jokingly, "Why? Are you going to give your father a final stab?" "Zizi, you are his daughter. Do you need to be so cruel?" "Final stab?" Gently chewing this strange word, Takatsuki-san immediately shook her head and said, "I don't know what final stab means, but I don't mind giving the old man a few stab. You are really cruel." Dustless rolled his eyes and immediately waved his hand and said, "No need. Fangmura Gongshan's body is turned into sand-like particles." "Humph, that old bastard is lucky." Takatsuki-san stamped her feet angrily and looked quite angry. For the store manager, Takatsuki-san hated him very much. The old man abandoned her when she was a child. He didn't save her before, and even used Takatsuki-san to threaten Dustless. The so-called father-daughter relationship had long since faded to the point where it could be ignored. "Quan, let's retreat. The mission ends here. Everything that should be cleaned up has been cleaned up." Glancing at Takatsuki-san faintly, Dustless leisurely turned and left. Time flew by. In the blink of an eye, 10 days had passed. Pucci. The golden brilliance cut through the thorns, smashed the ghoul in front of him in one fell swoop, and cut its waist. Intestines and various other organs were exposed to the sun. "Quan, this should have been wiped out by now." Above the ruins, 3 figures looked into the distance. Under them, there were endless corpses piled up into a mountain, and blood flowed into a river, filled with the smell of blood. "Dustless-sama." Takatsuki-san looked at Dustless respectfully and immediately said seriously, "The ghouls in Tokyo have almost been wiped out, and there are only a few of us left. In the past few days, Dustless almost wiped out all the ghouls. Anyway, it was a scourge to keep them, so he killed them all. It was like saving the world. And thanks to Dustless, Takatsuki-san was also changed into a half-human, and she no longer needed to eat human flesh and live a normal life." "Is it?" Lowering his head and sighing, Dustless murmured to himself, "Then, let's retreat. This is the last moment in this world. If there's anything you haven't solved yet, go and finish it quickly. Leave in 2 hours." The things that should be dealt with have been dealt with. Dustless had no reason to continue to stay and delay time. "Leave." Kaneshiro Rise glanced at Dustless suspiciously. She still had a shadow in her heart for this guy, and there was an almost instinctive fear in her eyes. "Yes." Dustless nodded and said in a deep voice, "This world has come to this, so the things that should be solved have been solved. Naturally, there is no need to continue to stay." "I refuse." Kaneshiro Rise immediately shook her head when she heard the words. Go into the unknown world with Dustless. What if she was kidnapped? Although this concern was somewhat ridiculous, it was not unreasonable. "Refuse." Staring at Kaneshiro Rise with interest, Dustless narrowed his eyes and joked, "You can refuse, but I will use the previous Tsukuyami on you. Are you threatening me?" Without waiting for Dustless to finish talking nonsense, Kaneshiro Rise couldn't wait to interrupt Dustless, staring at him angrily. Clenching her fists, she couldn't wait to beat Dustless. "Haven't you been beaten up enough?" Dustless looked at Kaneshiro Rise lazily and suddenly raised his leg. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Then Dustless's leg was covered with a dazzling light, ready to go. "Want to try?" Dustless had a smirk on his face, and, at the same time, he shook his leg. The high-density light was concentrated and filled with fatal sharpness, making Kaneshiro Rise's scalp tingle. Can't this bastard be more considerate of others? Kaneshiro Rise complained in her heart. She was furious, but she could only endure it. The difference in strength between them was as exaggerated as the sky and the earth. The latter was destined to look up to the former. Even if it was the gates of hell, Kaneshiro Rise had to go with Dustless. If she wanted to complain, she could only complain that he was too weak. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2066. Kamishiro Rise could only endure and sulk. There was no way. The scene of being trampled by Dustless before was still vivid in her mind. If she refused the conditions of Dustless, she was afraid that she would be tortured half to death. About an hour later, Takatsuki's son, who went far away, finally came late, but surprisingly, she also brought a blue-haired girl. Kirishima Tuka. Dustless looked at the girl in front of him with a little surprise. He saw that the girl's crimson eyes were full of coldness, and there was a bad luster. He, feeling the eyes that could not wait to cut him into pieces, Dustless smiled and said indifferently, "The people in the antique coffee shop have been wiped out. Even if you hate me, it is useless. Dead is dead." If she wanted revenge, she could only kill Dustless, but this was simply impossible. Even if Kirishima Tuka was divided into 10 people, she was not Dustless's opponent. "Kill me if you have the guts." Kirishima Tuka's small face was angry, and she was not afraid of Dustless's oppression. "Kill you?" Dustless shook his head when he heard the words, and immediately his face showed a wicked smile. "Killing you directly is too easy for you. It is better to put you by my side." "Put me by your side?" Kirishima Tuka was stunned for a moment, and immediately asked coldly, "You put a deadly enemy by your side. Are you not afraid that he will kill you?" Kirishima Tuka was puzzled. Her eyes were filled with endless astonishment. She always felt that Dustless's head was broken. "Just by you?" Hearing this, Dustless couldn't help but smile, not to mention himself. Many female confidants in the system, almost every one of them was the existence that crushed Kirishima Tuka. If you can kill them, you are really powerful. Dustless shook his head. He was too lazy to continue to pay attention to Kirishima Tuka. This girl was just an additive to his boring life. In recent days, the news that all the ghouls were wiped out naturally spread out. Tokyo, which was originally dead and empty, once again had many humans return. About a few months later, knowing that the ghouls in Tokyo had completely disappeared, this deserted city gathered a large number of humans again. But this was all in the future. In the system world, let's cross to the next world. Under the shade of the green tree, Dustless stared at the beautiful girl and asked, "Every time I cross, I look forward to it." An unknown world meant a strange territory. Every time he transmigrated, Dustless was looking forward to it. "Do you start now?" The system consciousness Ling air glanced at Wuchun. After seeing him nod his head, she waved her finger gently. "Kaka." The blue sky suddenly distorted, and the invisible sky shattered with a bang, revealing an unprecedented dark tunnel. Who Ling's Ling was Dustless was very calm. It seemed it was very calm, as if it was hers was it. "I'm going in." After thinking for a while, Dustless decisively went into the space tunnel. The world in front of him was immediately wrapped in darkness. The sky was blue. There were no clouds on the street. People were bustling, and their faces were full of satisfied smiles. "Really, Coterie, next time I'll never take you out shopping." The handsome boy sighed and looked at the girl with a ponytail behind him. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. The girl happily hugged a lot of snacks. Her eyes narrowed into a crescent moon. She looked very satisfied. Her perfect little face was very satisfied, and her mouth was humming a pleasant song. These two people were Itsuka Shido and his sister Itsuka Kotori. So old, still like to eat snacks, just like a child. Itsuka Shido sighed. His words were full of helplessness. Buzz, at this time, the void suddenly twisted, and a huge black hole appeared, exuding a terrifying gravity. "What is that? Black hole? Is God not happy with us humans and punishing us? No, this thing seems to be Spacequake. It must be Spacequake. Run." After the crowd regained their senses, They were stunned for a moment before they immediately scattered in all directions, revealing fearful expressions. Soon, the deafening sound of an alarm rang through the sky. After detailed inspection, a large-scale space quake will occur in this area in 10 seconds. Please evacuate immediately. After detailed inspection, a large-scale space quake will occur in this area in 10 seconds. The mechanical alarm kept repeating the same sentence, and the citizens quickly hid in the shelters, their faces full of fear and terror. There was even endless disgust. To humans, fairies were the embodiment of disaster. 30 years ago, the Eurasian air disaster had taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. People were terrified of such an unprecedented disaster. Boom, boom, boom. The black hole in the void suddenly exploded. The violent shock wave flattened the glass in a 1-kilometer radius, and even the nearby buildings shook. Kaboom! Some of the buildings couldn't withstand the violent shock wave and collapsed like willow branches. Fresh air, a splendid world. What a nice place. A voice filled with emotion came from the distant horizon. He looked up and saw a shadowy figure standing in the sky. His black hair fluttered in the wind, and his 2 dark eyes were as bright as the stars. I think I heard someone call me a fairy. Without a doubt, the intruder was dustless. He floated in the sky and pondered. Is this the world of date battle? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters. 3,000 tips plus more chapters. 1,000 comments plus more chapters. 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2067. But this group of people is really stupid. I remember that elves are all female, right? I'm a man, and this group of idiots actually thought that I was an elf. They even said that I caused some kind of spatial tremor. What a joke. Even ignorance has a bottom line. Shaking his head and sighing, Dustless's body slowly descended. Looking down at the huge city, his heart could not help but be filled with emotions. To be honest, after crossing through several worlds, although his heart had been polished, coming to a foreign world still touched his heart. He could not help but feel emotional every time. I have just arrived, and I am already listed as an enemy. What an unexpected calamity. No wonder they mistook me for an elf. The humans in this world probably think that only elves can cause spacequake. Thinking back to when he just arrived in this world, he caused a violent spacequake. This kind of thing had happened before, but unfortunately, this world was regarded as the so-called spacequake. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. At this moment, a sharp sound pierced through the sky. A mysterious flying object with flames on its tail flew towards him. That is, Dustless frowned slightly and looked over carefully. When he recognized the object that was attacking him, his face turned cold. His handsome face flashed with a strong, murderous intent. I have just arrived in this world, and someone is already trying to destroy me. That is too disrespectful. The so-called elf who is hostile to me is probably that AST, the Special Forces of the Land Self-Defense Force. They were commonly known as the AST, Anti-Spirit Team. They were a unit established with the main purpose of annihilating elves by force, compared to Ratatosker, whose purpose was dialogue. Since normal physical weapons were not enough to fight against elves, the members were equipped with CR Unit, Tactical Display Device Mounting Combination, Combat Realize Unit. This allowed ordinary people to have the ability to fight on the front line. It could be said that they were the existence of modern magicians and artificial magicians. However, CR Unit was only used on a small number of people. Boom, boom, boom. Dustless's body was besieged by fierce firepower. He suddenly exploded, splashing a large amount of smoke and flames. A violent wave erupted from the depths of the void. Is it destroyed? A girl with delicate features flew into the sky. Her small face was serious as she muttered to herself. With a head of white hair, her appearance was exceptionally perfect. Her white skin made people want to peck it gently. The white-hair girl was called Kite Origami. She was also the one who attacked Dustless first. When Origami was young, her parents died because of the appearance of a flaming elf. So she hated elves. In order to prevent others from suffering the same tragedy as him, He strived to eliminate the elves as his goal. In short, this white-haired girl hated fairies very much. Every time she met a fairy, it would awaken her bad memories of the past. Origami, without my order, you are not allowed to attack. Daybreak Prairie Fire, who was wearing CR unit equipment, scolded. She was the direct superior of Kitsunichi Origami. Staring at the white-haired girl, Kite Origami's face showed a helpless expression. Every time Origami saw elves, she would be extremely extreme. She had tried to persuade her before, but it seemed to have no effect. Oh, what a group of rude girls. At this moment, Dustless's lazy voice came from the boiling sea of fire. You don't greet me when you see me, and you open fire when you have a disagreement. No, you don't even have a disagreement. Until now, you haven't said a word to me. In a sea of fire, an extremely strong wind suddenly burst out, blowing away the entrenched flames. Then, Wu Chun, who was safe and sound, slowly walked out with a calm face. Unscathed? The members of AST looked at Dustless in shock. Although they knew that elves were extremely powerful and could do what humans could not, it was rare for Dustless to be unscathed after being hit by a large number of missiles without any defense. What is there to be shocked about? Showing an expression of disbelief in front of your enemies will make them look down on you. You took the initiative to attack me. If I don't give you the necessary punishment, it will make me look like a pushover. Looking at the stunned girls, Dustless only snorted in disdain. If this kind of trash can kill me, I would have been destroyed hundreds of years ago. Kite Origami heard Dustless's arrogant tone and immediately swooped down. She also threw away the equipment in her hand and changed her weapon for a sharp blade that looked like it was compressed from a laser. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A straight line of light flashed across the sky. Kite Origami was equipped with CR unit and arrived on time. Her fatal blade had already cut Dustless's throat. Slash! The blade fell mercilessly. Dustless's head was suddenly cut off and fell to the ground from the sky. You should be dead now. Seeing the head on the ground, Kite Origami breathed a sigh of relief. When she turned to look at Dustless's body, the world in her eyes was replaced by a large number of flashes. You must be thinking that I'm too weak, right? A ghostly voice resounded. Kite Origami's eyes widened. She found that Dustless, who should have been dead, appeared in front of her, and it was extremely exaggerated that he was a headless corpse. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The head that fell before suddenly elementalized and turned into a pile of bright light particles. Then, it quickly floated up and condensed at the place where Dustless was not. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2068. What kind of monster is this guy? The members of AST were stunned, and they stared at Dustless with their mouths agape. Such a strange elfin, with strange and bizarre abilities, and an existence that defied the natural order of things. A male elfin? Under the sun, Liaozi stared at Dustless with his mouth agape. When he got closer to Dustless, he realized that he was a man. At first, he thought that this guy was a woman, especially with the vicissitudes of life in his tone. There was no specific distinction between men and women. Moreover, Dustless's skin was white, and his appearance was handsome and refined. If he were to wear women's clothing, everyone might think that Dustless was a woman. I'm not an elfin. Of course, it's useless to quibble. It's up to you whether to believe it or not. Dustless shook his head. He did not expect Kite One Origami and the others to believe him. In their understanding, people who had superpowers and could cause space to vibrate were all elfins. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. A sharp whistling sound came from the left, and it was so loud that it hurt their eyes. Dustless also felt that he was locked on by a dangerous aura. He turned his head to look, and a burst of silver light hit his face. It's you again? Seeing Kite One Origami's cold face, Dustless inevitably frowned. Even if you don't know what's good for you, you should have a bottom line. Swoosh, swoosh, swoosh. The glowing blade swept over again. Kite One Origami, who did not believe it, once again slashed the light blade in her hand towards Dustless's head. Clang, clang, clang. A clear roar followed. Dustless did not indulge Kite 1 origami anymore. He decisively took a counterattack, and his right hand whistled out at lightning speed. At the critical moment, he blocked the light blade that was coming at him. His method was extremely shocking. One finger? Kite 1 origami looked at Dustless in shock, or simply looked at his right arm. When he looked up, he saw Dustless easily blocking Tokichi origami's attack with a single finger. The white thumb suppressed the lightsaber, preventing it from moving forward. It was easily intercepted in front of Dustless's chest. No matter how much strength origami used, it could not break through Dustless's thumb. How is that possible? Is this guy's finger made of steel? Steel? Even if his fingers are made of steel, we can still cut them off. You're right, CR unit equipment can easily cut through steel, but against this guy, every member of AST felt their heads spin. They were stunned by Dustless's heaven-defying performance. A single finger had blocked Toichi origami's beam saber attack. What kind of concept was this? That was not a wooden saber. Even ordinary steel could be easily cut through. At this moment, what made everyone's jaws drop was that Dustless had actually used an unassuming finger to block the laser sword that could cut through iron like mud. How could everyone not be shocked? Even if he was cheating, there must be a certain level. With your level, there's only one way to defeat me. Dustless's tone was very serious. It did not seem like he was joking. What way? Staring at Dustless's clear eyes, it did not seem like he was lying. Origami asked subconsciously. People like Dustless had no reason to lie to her. Hearing this, Dustless's expression changed. He suddenly laughed and teased. In your dreams. Arrogant guy, you're courting death. Origami's small face was red with anger. This cruel answer was quite a blow to her. She immediately held the lightsaber with both hands and slashed at Dustless. This little girl's body is petite, but her strength is quite great. Dustless looked at Origami with surprise. Then, he calmly flicked a ray of light from his finger and directly attacked the lightsaber. Laser shot. The dazzling light whistled out and hit the lightsaber head-on. Gotcha! As if it had met its natural enemy. The seemingly extraordinary lightsaber was instantly pierced, leaving a hole about the size of a fist. It can even emit light. A group of AST members were stunned. They were shocked and speechless as they looked at Dustless. What kind of monster is this guy? His skin is harder than diamonds, and he can fly on his own. Other than that, he can also emit light? Is there such an elf? Liaozi's eyes were gloomy. He was even more pessimistic about Origami. Everyone, let's go together. Not daring to underestimate Dustless, Liaozi ordered his subordinates to surround Dustless. The crowd formed a circle. Everyone stared at Dustless. With your level, killing me is as difficult as ascending to heaven. Looking around, Dustless bluntly said, You should go back to class. Especially you. Dustless's line of sight swayed and once again fell on Origami. He smiled seriously and said, Seeing that you have a good physique and extraordinary appearance, why don't you be my personal maid? Don't look down on me. Liaozi glared angrily and almost couldn't resist slashing at him. Origami's cute little face was also filled with rare anger. Her parents were killed by the elves. The grudge between them was irreconcilable. How could she recognize a thief as her father? You can't bear to part with her? Dustless glanced at Liaozi under the sun and immediately pointed at Kite Origami. He asked in surprise, It's okay. I have always been a kind person. If you want to continue to accompany me, you can follow Origami and join me. Then I would rather die. Liaozi raised her eyebrows and said coldly. She was young, but her temper was big. If that's the case, Wu Chen's figure flashed and disappeared. Not to mention the blurry trace of a shadow or residual shadow. When everyone came back to their senses, Wu Chen had already disappeared. I have shown you the way. If you don't know what's good for you, you can only accept being trampled on. If the enemy was a tough person, it was actually very easy to reason with them. There was no need to use the great principles of the literati. You could just use your fists to crush them. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers, 3,000 rewards. 1,000 comments, 500 automatic subscriptions. Chapter 2069. Bang, bang, bang. A row of dense bullets swept over, and the continuous flames pierced through Dustless's body. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. The body that stood in the void was pierced through one after another, and there were thousands of holes all over his body. Almost no part of his skin was intact, and his entire body was torn apart. He should be dead now, right? Under the sun, Liaozi stared at Dustless with burning eyes. Seeing the bullet marks all over his body, she heaved a sigh of relief. Although the elves were strong, they would definitely die if they were beaten like this. However, sadly, not long after Liaozi finished speaking, she was quickly slapped in the face. Buzz, buzz, buzz. Dustless's body emitted a bright light that spread all over his body. The holes all over his body were instantly repaired. In the blink of an eye, he was restored to his original state under everyone's stunned gaze. This. Under the sun, Yuichi Origami and her other subordinates all widened their eyes in disbelief. Their dumbfounded expressions were rather comical. It was not that they were ignorant, but Dustless was too shocking and had refreshed everyone's understanding. It's my turn. His gaze froze, and his dangerous eyes stared at the few of them, sweeping over them as if he was choosing his target. Be careful, Origami. This guy is very dangerous. Under the sun, Liaozi approached Yuichi Origami and stared at Dustless with a wary expression. She shook the gun in her hand, seemingly warning Dustless not to act rashly. Tisk. Seeing this, Dustless only snorted contemptuously and sped away after sneering. Bang, bang, bang. Seeing Dustless's excessive actions, a row of dense bullets greeted him again. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Dustless's body was once again riddled with holes and bruises. His body was full of bullet holes, and it was a tragic sight. If an ordinary person or an elf turned into another elf, they would be shot into a sieve. Other than death, there was no other way out. However, Dustless was an exception. Poochie. The bullets continued to rain down on Wu Chen's body. Wu Chen's body was smashed into pieces, but even so, his expression did not change. His face remained indifferent from the beginning to the end. Not only that, but Dustless also stepped on the air calmly, completely ignoring the rain of bullets. Damn it! Retreat for now. Seeing Dustless charging towards him, Daybreak Prairie Fire cursed loudly. He pulled Kite One Origami with his right arm and hurriedly retreated. It had to be said that to be selected as a member of a special unit like AST, Blazing Sun, as the team leader was indeed an outstanding existence in all aspects. His reaction was very timely. Swish, swish. Under the sun, Liaozi pulled Origami Kite and fled frantically. Their speed was so fast that one could only see a straight flash of light. That annoying male elf is too strong. We need to come up with a new plan. Under the sun, Liaozi said as he panted. He turned his head and looked at Yuichi Origami subconsciously. His eyes were instantly stunned. Where are they? After being stunned for a while, Liaozi realized that Yuichi Origami Kite and his other subordinates were nowhere to be seen. The veins on his forehead suddenly popped out. On the other side, the ground was filled with smoke and burned black. A few girls in a sorry state and a tall and straight body could be clearly seen. A group of people stood out. There was no doubt that it was Dustless and the others. They were all captured by Dustless. That girl is your team leader, right? Her strength is average, but her ability to escape is commendable. Dustless gave a thumbs up, but his tone was full of sarcasm. Kill us if you have the guts. Yuichi Origami Kite did not show any weakness. Even if she was captured, her attitude of hatred towards elves did not change at all. Instead, when she faced Dustless, her anger seemed to be greater. How can this be? Dustless stubbornly shook his head and said in a very serious tone, From today onwards, you are a member of my territory. Your territory? Where is it? These words were like a panacea. Not only was Yuichi Origami Kite stunned, the other AST members who were captured also looked at Dustless in confusion. They could not figure out what he was talking about. This guy still has a territory? Could it be his lair? Yuichi, Origami Kite, and the other AST members exchanged glances with each other. There was a flash of light in their eyes, as if they were all planning something. Yuichi, Origami Kite, and the others planned to get Dustless to speak first, then sneak into his lair to overthrow him. There might be other elves too, so they could take the opportunity to eliminate them all. Okay, we promise you. Yuichi, Origami Kite's eyes turned and chose to compromise for the time being. Very good. You are very tactful. Hearing this, Dustless smiled slightly and immediately announced loudly, "From now on, this planet under my feet is my territory. I welcome you to be a part of it." Puffed. Yuichi, Origami Kite, and the other AST members almost vomited blood. Did they still need Dustless to welcome them? The few of them were originally members of this azure planet. This guy is simply outrageous. His thoughts are as ridiculous as a child's. Does he think that just by opening his mouth and casually saying that Earth is his territory, it's simply wishful thinking? How can he say such stupid words? Ignorant. Yuichi, Origami Kite's teammates exchanged glances and glared at Dustless indignantly. This guy must have a screw loose in his head. Dustless wanting to swallow up such a big planet was tantamount to a fool's dream. Although the elves were powerful, humans were not made of mud. Otherwise, they would have been destroyed long ago. Chapter 2070. The members of AST were infuriated by Dustless's arrogance. They glared at Dustless and stomped their feet in anger. They were not happy with Dustless's arrogant attitude. At the same time, in another direction, two pairs of sneaky eyes were quietly sizing up Dustless and the members of AST. "Coterie, let's get out of here. This is not the place for us." Shido tugged on Itsuka Coterie's sleeve and looked at the ruins. He couldn't help but shudder and took a few steps back with fear on his face. "You're not very useful." The immature Itsuka Coterie sighed softly, and her fair face was filled with extraordinary calmness and wisdom. Coterie knew Shido's special ability. Although she could seal spirits, there was nothing she could do. Asking Dustless to go on a date with Shido, Coterie got goosebumps when she thought about it. If she did that, Dustless would go crazy and destroy the world. The only way is to make him like this world. Coterie and AST had different ideologies. AST was an organization that was hostile to the spirits and would destroy them. Ratatosker, on the other hand, was a member of Coterie's Ratatosker. "I have no choice but to do it myself." Itsuka Coterie's eyes were filled with courage. It seemed like she had made a decision. She released an unimaginably powerful aura. Even Itsuka Shido was shocked. Why did his sister, who had always been weak, suddenly change so much at this moment? Even her aura had become much stronger. "What are you looking at?" Itsuka Coterie glared at the dazed Itsuka Shido. She crossed her arms in front of her chest and analyzed in her mind. "Although I don't have the power to control the world, I don't plan to seal this guy away. I need to make him like this world and not destroy it." Itsuka Coterie's goal was quite simple. She didn't have many extravagant hopes. She simply hoped that through her own efforts, Wu-chun would like this world. It would be best if he could integrate into human society. As for sealing spirits, Coterie didn't have the ability to do so. It was Shido's unique ability. Elves were unfamiliar with the unfamiliar environment, especially AST, who was very unkind. They continuously shattered Dustless's body, so it was inevitable that the elves would be hostile to this planet. Itsuka Coterie decided to take matters into her own hands. She hoped that through her own efforts, Dustless would like this world and temporarily stabilize his emotions. "You can go back now." On the other side, Dustless glanced at Origami Kitsune and the others and suddenly gave the order to expel them. "You want us to leave?" Origami Kitsune looked at Wu-chun suspiciously, thinking that she had heard wrongly. However, seeing Wu-chun's serious look, it didn't seem like he was lying. The group of teammates looked at each other and immediately left. "Remember this." Glancing at the members of AST, Dustless said coldly, "Swords have no eyes. If you dare to trouble me again, you will end up like this." As his voice faded, Dustless suddenly lifted his right foot and stomped on the ground. Crack, crack, crack. The seemingly stable ground crumbled in an instant. Cracks spread out for dozens of meters. Thump! The sudden violent tremor caught Origami Kitsune and the others off guard. They couldn't withstand a single blow and fell to the ground in a sorry state. "Damn you!" The members of AST glared angrily at Dustless. Seeing Dustless's attitude of looking down on an ant, they were all furious. I'm not kidding around. He radiated the hostility hidden in his body. A large amount of cold mist visible to the naked, I drifted out. Crack, crack, crack. A layer of crystal clear ice formed on the ground. It quickly spread and devoured the ground. What a terrifying killing intent. The group of AST members looked at Dustless in panic. They felt as if they had fallen into hell. "You can go now. Remember next time, my orders are the supreme order. Even if you have to sacrifice your lives, you must carry out my will," Dustless said sternly. His tone was colder than ice. He then retracted his killing intent. Even if it was just a tiny bit, it was not something these girls could bear. Where there's life, there's hope. Retreat for now. Tabichi Origami looked at Dustless unwillingly. In the end, she chose to leave. The enemy was too strong. It was beyond the limit of what they could contend with. It's about time for me to find a place to stay. After seeing that the AST members had disappeared, Wu Chen sighed. He looked around and saw a tall building in the distance. Then, he walked over decisively. He let the AST members go because he had no other choice. After all, they had just arrived and had no place to stay. It wouldn't be too late to kidnap them after finding a suitable base. "Yo!" A clear and melodious voice suddenly came, and Wu Chen's line of sight subconsciously swept over. She had a head of fiery red hair that was tied up in a ponytail. She had a lollipop in her mouth, and a strange light flashed through her beautiful eyes. Her cheeky little face was slightly raised, and her skin was as white as snow. Her cheeks were so perfect that no one could find fault with them. Is this Itsuka Kotori? Dustless's mind went blank for a moment. He stared at the girl's delicate face with a strange expression. He could vaguely see the hidden cunning in the depths of his eyes. Itsuka Kotori wouldn't think that I'm an elf and want to date me, right? Dustless shook his head like a rattledrum. He then took a deep look at Itsuka Kotori. He suddenly understood what she meant. She probably wanted him to like or even fall in love with this world and not destroy it. In fact, even without Itsuka Kotori's reminder, Dustless would never destroy a world unless the entire human race stood against him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2071. How strange. Wu-chan looked at Itsuka Kotori with a weird expression. It was a new experience to be conquered by a 12 or 13-year-old girl. He had never experienced it before. It was a new experience, but at the same time, he was speechless. This is not a bad idea. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori with interest and said with a smile, "Little girl, I'm not familiar with this place. Why don't you show me around? I will get a reward if I complete the mission." Little girl. Itsuka Kotori's face darkened when she heard Chun Fan's words. "I am happy to help." Itsuka Kotori pursed her lips and smiled. Her smile was as beautiful as a blooming flower. She was so young, but her smile was already very alluring. "Very good." However, Wu Chun just nodded slightly. His clean and white skin didn't have the slightest reaction. His calm eyes didn't have any ripples. How can this guy not be seduced by me? How dare you? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless's calm demeanor and couldn't help but feel frustrated. It was rare for her to doubt her looks. If possible, she hoped that Dustless would be seduced by her. It was a date, and it would be a failure if she couldn't even seduce her lover. "What do you like? I will take you there." Itsuka Kotori rolled her eyes, and a series of plans appeared in her mind. A confident smile appeared on her delicate face again. "What do you like?" Dustless lowered his head and thought for a while. He suddenly realized that he didn't have any other hobbies in his long life other than power. Let's go eat. Dustless couldn't think of any other hobbies. He had reached his current level of power, and all his desires had been fulfilled. What other hobbies did he have? He didn't even need them. Instead, he felt hungry. What a strange fairy. She glanced at Wuchan with a strange look. She pouted her pink lips and said with a smile, I'm familiar with the place nearby. Let's go on a date. No, let's go for a meal. Itsuka Kotori quickly changed her mind. She looked at Dustless and saw that his expression didn't change. She heaved a sigh of relief, but at the same time, she felt a little frustrated. If she couldn't seduce him on a date, what else could it be? Moreover, Itsuka Kotori's original intention was to make Wuchan like this world. His indifferent attitude and attitude towards everything was a failure. What was it if not failure? Kotori. Watching Itsuka Kotori drag Dustless away, Itsuka Shido felt his heart was filled with a sense of emptiness. It was as if something that belonged to him was suddenly taken away. It was very uncomfortable. Half an hour later, Itsuka Kotori took Dustless around the food street. In order to make Dustless like this world, Itsuka Kotori spared no effort. Sadly, Wuchan remained calm from the beginning to the end. The number of times he spoke to Itsuka Kotori during this period could be counted on one hand. He only nodded or replied with a yes. This wooden fairy. The bustling street had returned to normal after the spatial tremor. Itsuka Kotori was holding a glass of juice in her hand, and she was sucking on it with a straw. Her face was puffed up, and she looked rather cute as she panted with anger. Itsuka Kotori asked Dustless about his past, but he was always evasive. Sometimes, he even treated Itsuka Kotori as if she was invisible. This is the most depressing date I have ever had. Itsuka Kotori stomped her feet in frustration. No matter how hard she tried, Dustless didn't seem to care at all. Sometimes, he even thought the boring advertisements were more interesting than her. No wonder I am not charming at all. Itsuka Kotori touched her face, thinking there was something on it. Oh right, Dustless suddenly thought of something and asked in a serious tone, Is there an empty apartment nearby? I need to buy a shelter from the wind and rain. Since he was already here, he couldn't just stay on the streets all day. He had to find a suitable place to shelter himself from the storm. An apartment? Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless in surprise. She frowned. Fairies could constantly release their psychic waves. It was only a matter of time before they were caught if they moved into an apartment. Plus, Dustless might start a war with the humans. He might not be able to destroy the world, but he could easily destroy a city. If that's the case, why don't you stay in my place? Itsuka Kotori thought her place was more suitable for Dustless. She could take care of him if anything happened. Besides, it was her mission to save the fairies. Your place. Dustless looked up and met Itsuka Kotori's clear eyes. She was looking at him with open eyes. Dustless didn't sense any evil intentions in her eyes. This girl is quite bold. Isn't she afraid of inviting a wolf into her house? I remember Itsuka Kotori has a brother called Itsuka Shido. Dustless was surprised. Itsuka Kotori's action was like walking on a tightrope. I don't mean any harm. Dustless stared at Itsuka Kotori for a few more seconds, and his impression of her increased. He knew that this little girl wanted him to live in peace with the humans, and she had no ill intentions. Without a doubt, Itsuka Kotori really wanted to help the elves. However, it was worth mentioning that Dustless wasn't a fairy. He was just an imposter. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters. 3,000 rewards plus more chapters. 1,000 comments plus more chapters. 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2072. Will you agree? Itsuka Kotori clenched her fists tightly. She looked very nervous. After all, elves gave people the impression that they were extremely mysterious creatures, and it was extremely difficult to communicate with them. Getting along with humans and coexisting in the same space was even more difficult. No problem. After a few seconds of silence, Dustless was surprisingly easy to talk to. He even smiled at Itsuka Kotori. That's great. Come home with me. Itsuka Kotori wiped the sweat off her face when she heard Dustless agree. She thought to herself, this elf is not as hard to deal with as I thought. In her mind, elves were vulgar people who would start a fight at the slightest provocation. Itsuka Kotori was surprised that Dustless was so well-mannered. Very easy to deal with. If all elves are like this, I don't need Shido's help. Itsuka Kotori's eyes narrowed into crescents. She looked at Wu Chun with confidence. At the same time, he opened his mouth and was about to set the rules. However, Wu Chen's voice sounded in advance. You have a brother, right? I think his name is Itsuka Shido. I'm sorry, but I'm not interested in living under the same roof as a man. So, please ask him to move out. Wu Chun looked into Itsuka Kotori's eyes. His tone was firm and unquestionable. Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she heard Dustless's words. You want Shido to move out? Are you kidding me? You need to know who you are. We are the owners, and you're just a lodger. Itsuka Kotori rolled up her sleeves and resisted the urge to beat Dustless to death. She warned loudly, Kid, get this straight. You're the invader. An outsider wants the original owner to move out? Take over the nest? Not a chance. Is that so? Hearing this, Wu Chun just nodded slightly, then suddenly turned around and left. Then I'll take my leave. You don't have to look for me. I'm going to destroy the world now that I'm heartbroken. This bastard, Itsuka Kotori's mouth twitched, and she almost swallowed the lollipop in her mouth. Stop right there. Itsuka Kotori yelled and chased after Chinchaobei. Little girl, you think you can fight with me? Don't overestimate yourself. Dustless looked back at Itsuka Kotori and smiled. Stop right there. Itsuka Kotori stood in front of Dustless with her hands on her hips and said, You win. I agree to your terms. That's more like it. Hearing this, Wu Chun chuckled and then said meaningfully, Soon, you'll feel lucky for your decision. Itsuka Shido's apartment. Huh? You want me to move out? Shido stared at Itsuka Kotori in bewilderment. His head was buzzing. He widened his eyes and looked at the helpless girl. Then, he looked at Wu Chun, who was resting on the sofa. Suddenly, he felt that his brain wasn't enough. Itsuka Shido almost vomited blood. His position in the family was lower than an outsider like Dustless. Cough, cough, cough. Itsuka Kotori coughed awkwardly. She felt sorry for Itsuka Shido since he was her brother, but she remembered Dustless's terms and conditions and could only accept it. Shido, don't worry and move out. I'll take care of the house from now on. Itsuka Kotori patted her chest like an adult. Someone will take care of us. Someone else will take care of the cooking. Someone will take care of us. Itsuka Shido looked at Itsuka Kotori in shock. His sister was good at eating, but cooking wasn't her forte. Could it be him? Itsuka Shido looked at Dustless suspiciously. He didn't think that Dustless knew how to cook. His skin was as white as snow, and his fingers were long and straight. He didn't look like someone who had cooked before. Creak. At the same time, the closed door was pushed open and a beautiful figure came into view. It's her, Dustless muttered. His calm eyes rippled with surprise. Dustless was familiar with this person. It was a young woman with a beautiful face and a perfect body. She was one of the prettiest women in the country. The only thing that was not complimentary about her was that she looked like she was in a trance. Her eyes were dark, and she was wobbling as if she could fall at any moment. It was as if she hadn't slept for years. So, it's Murasame Rain. This unreliable woman was Murasame Rain, the analyst of Ratatosker. This is interesting. Does this woman know how to cook? I think she's here to monitor me and test my data. Dustless closed his eyes again. He wasn't surprised. With Itsuka Kotori's status, it wasn't a problem to mobilize her. There had never been a male elf before. Sending Murasame Rain to test Dustless's data was normal. These guys really think I'm an elf. Dustless sighed helplessly. It wasn't a good thing to be treated as an elf. He would be watched and watched. Sometimes there would even be flies like AST harassing him. It was really annoying. What bad luck. Itsuka Shido looked at Dustless unhappily and suddenly went to his room. It seemed like he was going to pack his clothes and leave. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions, plus updates. Chapter 2073. Time flew by, and 3 days passed in the blink of an eye. It's Suka Shido's home. No, it should be Dustless's home now. The former had been expelled, and now there were only 3 people left in his home: Dustless, Itsuka Kotori, and Rei Murasame. As for Itsuka Shido, he was kicked out of the house. Strange. Rei Murasame frowned and looked at Dustless, and the dark circles under her eyes wrinkled a few times. I didn't detect psychic waves from Dustless. Psychic waves could be detected from elves, but Dustless didn't have this kind of energy fluctuation, which indirectly indicated that Dustless was not an elf. Not an elf? Looking at Rei Murasame suspiciously, Itsuka Kotori rarely doubted this confidant. If he's not an elf, Dustless is even more strange. Thinking of the battle that day, Itsuka Kotori cautiously said he used overwhelming strength to defeat AST that day. If he's not an elf, doesn't that mean Dustless is a human? Lane, have you seen such a powerful human like Dustless? No. If Dustless is really a human, he's definitely the strongest one. Rei Murasame's tone couldn't help but stagnate. It was the first time she encountered such an incredible and bizarre event. A human, without using the slightest equipment, defeated AST with overwhelming strength, which was an extremely amazing event in itself. So, we must pay closer attention to him. Itsuka Kotori crossed her arms, touched her chin, and wisely said, "This kind of person is no less dangerous than elves. We can't be careless." "But who will monitor you when you go to school?" Rei Murasame asked. It's very simple. Itsuka Kotori, who was wearing pajamas, walked elegantly and skipped toward Dustless, and the corner of her mouth revealed an imperceptible arc. "What's the matter?" Dustless, who was bored reading the newspaper, asked flatly. His tone was always calm, and it gave people the feeling that he was as calm as thunder. "You." Hearing Wu Chen's arrogant tone, Itsuka Kotori was furious. She said angrily, "Watch your tone. The owner of this house is called Itsuka." "You're right." Dustless was noncommittal. He lowered his head and said, "The sign at the door is indeed Dustless's house. I think it should be changed to Dustless's house now. From now on, this is my territory." "Poochie." Murasame Rain, who was drinking milk, spat it out and looked at Dustless with a cold face. She secretly gave him a thumbs up. Daring to say such words in front of Itsuka Kotori. This guy must be brave. "Don't push your luck." Itsuka Kotori was infuriated. She pointed a trembling finger at Dustless and scolded, "Shameless! How shameless can you be?" Suddenly, Itsuka Kotori's voice stopped abruptly. She suddenly felt cold all over, as if some prehistoric creature was staring at her. She couldn't help but shiver uncontrollably. Shoo, shoo, shoo. A chilly wind started to blow in the large room. The floor started to freeze, and the window was the most obvious. A layer of ice blocked the sunlight from entering the room. It was as if she had been transported to hell in an instant. There was a suffocating pressure all around. She felt uncomfortable. She followed the source and was shocked to find that the person who dragged her to hell was Dustless with a cold face. "I'm pushing my luck?" "Little girl, although I won't lower myself to the same level as a 12 or 13-year-old girl, you still have to be careful with your words." Dustless put the newspaper aside and looked at Itsuka Kotori. He explained casually, "Do you think I don't know what you're thinking? You just want to test my personal data. How boring. Haven't you two been doing this for the past 3 days?" "You found out." Murasame Rain's pupils froze. She looked at Dustless in disbelief. She thought she did it quietly, but Dustless had already noticed it. "Nonsense." Itsuka Kotori snorted and retorted, "Since you have already noticed it, why didn't you expose us? Why did you expose your personal data to us?" "It's up to you." Wu Chan waved his hand in boredom and laughed involuntarily. He sighed in his heart. "No matter what, I'm already a few hundred years old. I can't possibly fight with a 12 or 13 years old little girl, right? I don't have much to say. I just want to tell you." Wu Chan cleared his throat and said in an inviolable tone, The land under my feet is my territory. That's all. In other words, this planet is mine. What kind of barbaric system is this? Itsuka Kotori and Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. They thought Dustless was taking over Itsuka Kotori's home. Who would have thought that he wanted to take over Earth? Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, a violent tremor suddenly spread from the horizon, and the blue sky trembled fiercely. Spacequake detected in this area. Residents nearby, please evacuate immediately. Spacequake detected in this area. Residents nearby, please evacuate immediately. The ear-piercing sound of the alarm echoed through the clouds and into the earphones of everyone within a radius of tens of kilometers. Itsuka Kotori and Dustless, who were nearby, heard it loud and clear. Seems like the elves are really here this time. Dustless narrowed his eyes and looked at the distorted sphere. A strange light flashed in his eyes. Is it the night sword god Toka? P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters. 3,000 rewards plus more chapters. 1,000 comments plus more chapters. 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2074. Among the elves that appeared recently, Dustless thought for a while, and it seemed that there was only one night sword god Toka. Kakaka. The strange energy ball in the void continued to expand, occupying the surrounding sky. The expansion speed was extremely fast, and even the blue sky was covered in the blink of an eye. Boom! The buildings around the energy ball suffered a devastating blow one after another, turning into barren ruins. They were shattered by the powerful shockwave, and the bare ground was like a desert, with sand and dust filling the sky. Boom! The violent airwave hit Itsuka Kotori's house, and the stable house suddenly shook and was about to collapse. Really, there's a limit to how unscrupulous you can be. Dustless frowned, and his eyes turned into eternal Mangekyo Sharingan, and then a violent chakra burst out, and the golden evil energy covered the whole house. The violent vibration stopped, and the house was protected by Kansusanu's body. What is this? Murasame Ling In looked at Wu Chan in shock, with a face full of astonishment and surprise. Originally, Murasame Rain was still worried in the heart of the space shock, but she didn't know why. The moment this golden energy swept out from Wu Chen's body, her irritated heart immediately became as calm as still water, which was very strange. Don't worry about it. Leave here with me, Rain. Itsuka Kotori looked at Murasame Rain seriously, and then the two quickly exchanged a look and then quickly left under Dustless's gaze. She probably went to find Itsuka Shido. Looking at the two's back, Dustless was too lazy to ask more, and simply sat on the sofa, drinking coffee while reading the newspaper leisurely. If Itsuka Shido could save the world, then he could count on him, and Dustless was not interested in saving the entire human race, and the life and death of the people had nothing to do with him. But, looking at the messy world outside the window, Dustless's eyes suddenly narrowed as he muttered to himself, "Is it really appropriate to be so presumptuous on my planet? Nightblade, God 10 fragrances." Dustless placed his right thumb on the sofa and tapped it rhythmically. A cold light condensed in his pupils, as terrifying as a blade. A sense of oppression that was several times more terrifying than that of the elves circulated around him. If the spacequake caused by the elves was a natural disaster, then Dustless was as terrifying as the Grim Reaper. "Commander, isn't it too early to count on the young soldier?" Kotori and Rain Murasame rushed to Shido's school. Along the way, Rain Murasame couldn't help but murmur. After all, Shido had no knowledge in this area. If he didn't tame the elves, it would be bad. Do we have any other choices besides Shirdao? Kotori glanced at Rain Murasame and knew that her worries were unfounded. So she said helplessly, "Rain, it's not about whether it's appropriate or not. It's just that we don't have any other choice." Kotori couldn't think of any other plan other than using Shido's power to tame the elves. Although Dustless was an exception, Kotori didn't think that other elves were as easy to deal with as Dustless. Elves were naturally repulsed by unfamiliar environments and humans. Bang! Inside Shido's classroom, Itsuka Kotori kicked open the classroom door and dragged Shido out of there, ignoring everyone's shock. Shido, the mission of saving the world is yours. Kotori dragged Shido away after saying that. As for Rei Murasame, she stayed behind to mediate the situation for Kotori. Other than Shido, no one else could deal with the elves. Shido was the only one who had the power to seal the elves, so he was the only choice. Kotori, let go of me. Inside the hallway, Shido, who was almost strangled to death, struggled to get up. This was the first time he saw Kotori being so rough. Don't waste time. Come with me now. Kotori glared at Shido and dragged him to the center of the spacequake. That's the center of a spacequake. Are you crazy? Shido was shocked when he saw where Kotori was going. He yelled, "Come with me now. Kids shouldn't be messing around." Unfortunately, Kotori didn't appreciate it. She didn't even look at him as she dragged Shido out of the school. The commander mode Itsuka Kotori was indeed extraordinary. She was strong in every aspect. Seeing that her door was locked from the inside, and she didn't have the key, she kicked it without hesitation. Bam! Not sure where Itsuka Kotori got her strength from, but she kicked the door open. This little girl is really merciless. Be careful, this is my house. Wuchen looked over and couldn't help but shake his head. When he saw Itsuka Shido's bitter face, he pretended not to see anything and continued reading the newspaper. Your house. The owner of this house is Shido. Itsuka Kotori almost jumped up and glared at Dustless. She had never heard of such a domineering elf like Dustless. The planet he was stepping on was hers. How could he be so domineering and barbaric? This kind of rude and unreasonable behavior was even worse than robbery. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2075. The Door to Your House. The owner of this house is Itsuka. Itsuka Kotori almost jumped out of her seat and glared at Dustless. She had never heard of an elf as domineering as Dustless. The planet he was standing on was hers. How could he be so barbaric? This kind of rude and unreasonable behavior was even worse than robbery. Staring at the angry girl, Wu Chun just smiled gently without saying anything. Boom, boom, boom. At this moment, the violent tremors came again. The surface of the ground was easily torn apart, revealing shocking cracks. The vast land seemed to be on top of the sea, swaying nonstop. It was as if the end of the world had arrived. Kotori, let's get out of here. It's not safe here. We might be destroyed by the elves at any time. Itsuka Shido was in a terrible state. His body was trembling in fear. This was normal. After all, he was a human. Most humans would feel fear when facing an elf. No, Itsuka Kotori rejected Itsuka Shido's suggestion and quickly explained, Shido, I have a mission for you. You will go on a date with that elf for me later. A date? Itsuka Shido's face twitched. He looked at Itsuka Kotori speechlessly. He could go on a date with anyone, but he had to go on a date with an elf. Wasn't this pushing himself into a fire pit? It was an obvious act of suicide. Let me explain. Itsuka Kotori sighed and began to explain the nature of the date. This is too much. Dustless walked to the window lazily and looked up at the sky. His gaze froze when he saw the girl standing in the sky. He mumbled to himself, Night Sword God Toka? She seems to be quite strong. The girl standing in the sky had a head of long purple hair. She held a chilling sword in her hand. Her eyes were as dazzling as purple gems. Her skin was fair and flawless. Her perfect face had a hint of sadness. Her eyes were gloomy and hesitant. It seemed like she was unfamiliar with this world. So this is Night Sword God Toka. Dustless nodded and sat down on the sofa to read the newspaper. None of this had anything to do with him. Do you understand? Sure, Dao. 5 minutes later, Itsuka Kotori explained the meaning of date and said sternly, no matter what, you have to deal with that guy. Shido wanted to cry, but he had no tears. He wanted to reject this mission, but Kotori glared at him. "You held me from his side." She took another glance at Dustless and said in a righteous tone, "You have to pay if you want to eat here. You're the one who invited me to stay here." Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and said, "Help you take care of that elf? Sorry, I don't have much time, and I don't like to meddle in other people's business." Anyone would reject a mission that didn't have any benefits and would bring a lot of trouble. You heartless bastard." Kotori glared at Dustless and dragged Shido away. Dustless was acting shamelessly, but Kotori didn't have the means to punish Dustless. Itsuka Shido. Dustless stared at Itsuka Shido's back and muttered to himself, "This kid seems to have the ability to seal the elf's power. Normal humans don't have that kind of power. I guess it's just SOSO." But Dustless sighed and said, "Itsuka Kotori's stupid ideas will only harm Itsuka Shido." Dustless still remembered that in the original work, Itsuka Kotori and her subordinates often came up with all kinds of bad ideas to trick Itsuka Shido. If Shido wasn't smart enough, he would have been killed by Yusuke Toka. "Shido, listen to me." Itsuka Kotori pulled Shido's arm and said in a serious tone, "You will go on a date with the princess later. Elves aren't bad people. You should make friends with her and try your best to enlighten her. Make her like this world." Itsuka Shido's mouth twitched, and he asked in a gloomy tone, "Me? Go on a date with her? Are you sure you won't be killed by the princess?" "Of course not." Itsuka Kotori popped a lollipop into her mouth and smiled proudly. "After detailed analysis, there's a 30% chance that Princess will be angry, but she will definitely not kill you. Princess is not the kind of person who would kill innocent people. She accidentally caused the space tremor, and you have an honest face." Kotori gave Shido a thumbs up and told him not to worry. Honest man's face. Shido touched his face and couldn't help but smile bitterly. Kotori was looking down on him. "What are you waiting for?" Kotori kicked the cowardly Itsuka Shido and scolded, "We just got the exact data from Ratatosker. Princess is in a good mood right now. If AST is going to attack us later, you will definitely be killed if you provoke her." What Itsuka Kotori didn't know was that Dustless had done something out of the ordinary, and it had angered Toka, who was in a relatively stable mood. It was not that Dustless was deliberately trapping Ido Shurdao. Everyone had a limit to their tolerance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2076. Boom, boom, boom. In the boundless sky, a raging wave flashed. Such a huge commotion was like a shooting star in the night sky. It was too eye-catching, and Nightsword God Toka looked over. "Fierce Slayer." She waved her hand, and Nightsword God Toka slashed down with her blade. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. It was as if even the air had been sliced apart, and a clear crack appeared in the vast void. Boom, boom, boom. Fierce Slayer's sharp edge collided with the incoming slash, causing the boundless sky to tremble. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The deathly silent void let out a series of extremely human-like wails. If one looked up at the sky, they would be surprised to find that the lazy white clouds had all been swept away. Boom, boom. The two equally powerful moves collided violently. Immediately after, an endless shockwave swept out. Yidao Shun Toxiang, who was caught off guard, was violently attacked. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Shido looked up at the shadow in the sky and saw Toka's face almost freeze. He didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He looked back at Kotori, who was hiding in the dark, and sighed helplessly. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. Going on a date with such a monster. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. You got guts. Night Sword God raised his sword again and looked at Itoka Shido coldly. It was worth mentioning that the person who had attacked Knight Sword God Toxiang had nothing to do with Itoka Shido. It was Dustless. As for why he suppressed Knight Blade God 10 Incense, the reason was even simpler. Dustless was not the kind of person who would remain silent after being slapped in the face, regardless of who it was. The strength of the elves seems to be not bad. Looking up at the aftermath of the sky that had not completely dissipated, Dustless nodded secretly. It seemed that the person in the ghoul's world he had encountered before was much stronger. This is going to be a good show. Dustless had a gloating smile on his face as he stared at the petite figure in the void. The words on Toka's face were almost engraved with the words, "I am very unhappy." How dared Itoka Shido approach her so recklessly? He didn't know how to spell the word death. Swish, swish. Fierce Killer Duke abruptly swung down, and an incomparably biting cold light fell beside Itoka Shido. Boom, boom, boom. The ground on the right side of his feet suddenly exploded, and a horrifying hole was created. The ground was shaking, and Itoka Shido's body couldn't continue to maintain balance. Plop! Itoka Shido was careless and fell to the ground. This is bad. Seeing such a scene, Itsuka Kotori couldn't help but regret. Letting Shido, a human, touch the elves on Wrath's head. Wasn't this asking for trouble? Why did you suddenly attack me? Itoka Shido, who fell down, was confused. He looked up at Toka, who was standing in the void with a cold temperament. He looked at her blankly. He didn't seem to have offended this female elf. Could it be? Itoka Shido was also a smart person. Thinking of the attack just now, he wanted to cry, but had no tears. He was sweating in his heart and thought, did she think that I was the one who attacked her? Thinking of this, Itoka Shido's body trembled twice. This was simply an unexpected disaster. The attack just now was done by Dustless. It had nothing to do with him. Shoo, shoo, shoo. At the same time, a bright light flashed across the sky. Toka also landed beside Itoka Shido. Toka Shido looked down at Itoka Shido and asked in an unfriendly tone, "Are you here to kill me too? Were you the one who attacked me just now?" As soon as he finished speaking, Toka raised his sword with a ferocious expression. If Itoka Shido didn't give a reasonable explanation, he would cut him down with his sword. It was a very threatening sight. "I heard you. It has nothing to do with me. I'm here to help you." Itoka Shido quickly refused. His face was pale with fear, but he had no choice but to face it. Itoka Shido couldn't help but tremble when he saw Toka's ferocious look. He subconsciously took 2 steps back. Oh no! Seeing this, Itoka Kotori's heart skipped a beat. An indescribable sense of uneasiness spread through every inch of her body. Her heart raced. It was filled with an indescribable sense of uneasiness, especially when she saw Toka's sword hovering above Itoka Shido's head. She was sweating profusely. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 tips plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 auto subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2077. There was no doubt about the coldness of the elves. Not every elf was as easy to talk to and communicate with as Dustless. For example, the current Night Blade God 10 Fragrances had a sense of rejection towards the outside world, including humans and other creatures, and even grass and trees. Especially when Dustless attacked the Night Blade God 10 Fragrances just now. She even suffered a great loss, causing this young girl to be in a very bad mood. Therefore, she held a serious hostile attitude towards everything in the human world. "Tell me, why did you attack me?" Toka demanded coldly. She was the complete opposite of the naughty girl she would be in the future. The girl was beautiful, but the coldness she exuded was enough to make one's scalp numb. Gulp! Itsuka Shido, who was locked onto by the murderous aura, was scared witless. His body twitched slightly as he looked into Toka's cold eyes. His heart was boiling. Of course, he was scared. Anyone would be scared when facing death. After all, Itsuka Shido was a normal human. He didn't have the destructive power of the elves. Killing Itsuka Shido was a piece of cake for her. What should I do? On the other side, Itsuka Kotori's brain cells sped up. She had been secretly observing Itsuka Shido's movements. Ever since she noticed Toka Shido's mood plummeting, she became moody. Her heart was in her throat. After all, Itsuka Shido was her brother. Looks like it took a lot of effort. She's just a little girl. A lazy voice came from the side. It was like a light breeze or a miraculous elixir. Itsuka Kotori's anxiety was instantly quenched. Hurry up and help me save Shido. Itsuka Kotori was anxious. She even sounded like she was begging for help. How? Dustless glanced at Itsuka Kotori and asked coldly, "You want me to go on a date with a little girl? That's child's play. Why can't you go on a date with a little girl?" Itsuka Kotori was pissed off. She looked at Dustless angrily and said, "Are you an old man who's a few hundred years old? Do you feel awkward talking to a little girl?" "That's right, it's indeed awkward, unless that little girl asks me out." After taking a look, Dustless nodded and admitted it. He said calmly, "You want me to take the initiative to go on a date with a girl? Perhaps it would be more realistic for you to kill me." "You." Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori stomped her feet angrily. She stared at the stubborn Dustless and couldn't help but think of other countermeasures. "Oh, all right." Itsuka Kotori's eyes lit up, and a plan came to her mind. She smiled at Dustless and said, "I took you in, bought you food, and even took you shopping. Even if I didn't do anything, I still did my best. You should do me a favor and thank me, right?" This, Dustless frowned and waved his hand. "Forget it. What you said makes sense. I'll help you this time, but only this time." "That's more like it." Itsuka Kotori smiled happily and let out a sigh of relief. This guy might be a little cold, but he seems to be quite reliable in times of crisis. At least, he's more reliable than Shido. Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless in a new light. "Let me tell you something," Itsuka Kotori whispered into Dustless's ear. "Try to cheer up, princess, and communicate with her. Remember to go on dates in the future. It's best if you can." "I'm sorry." Unexpectedly, Wu-chun was not interested in listening to Itsuka Kotori's nonsense. He interrupted her bluntly, and a frivolous smile appeared on his face. "Compared to dating, I prefer to use violence to curb violence." Dustless wasn't good at dating, and, at the same time, he didn't want to waste his time. If that was the case, he might as well use violence to curb violence. Curb violence with violence. Itsuka Kotori was startled by Dustless's shocking words. It sounded like he was going to use his strength to suppress Toka. What would happen if the two elves fought? The world might not be destroyed, but this city would become a disaster area. You think silence can solve everything? On the other side, Toka looked down at the terrified Itsuka Shido. Fierce Killer Duke had already cut off Itsuka Shido's head. Even his hair was cut off. Itsuka Shido's expression changed drastically. He felt defeated. How could he strike up a conversation with Toka at such a critical moment? Itsuka Kotori's plan was just wishful thinking. No matter which world it was, after all was said and done, the stronger one was the one who had the final say. Then seeing Itsuka Shido's silence, Toka Shido lost his patience and swung Fierce Killer Duke. Shoo shoo shoo. In the nick of time, a streak of light shot over and grabbed at Fierce Killer Duke. Clang! His arm jerked, and a rare look of shock appeared on his face. Before he knew it, a cold figure had appeared in front of him. "Behave atrociously on my planet. Little girl, do you know what this means?" Wu Chen's emotionless tone came out of his mouth. His face was as indifferent as a stone. Phew! Itsuka Shido heaved a sigh of relief. Just as he was about to express his gratitude, Dustless spoke first. "I was just asked to do this. You don't have to thank me." Dustless didn't have a good impression of Itsuka Shido, but he didn't hate him either. All in all, he felt that Itsuka Shido was just an ordinary person. Whether he lived or died in the end had nothing to do with him. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2078. Staring at the cold face of Dustless, Itsuka Shido's lips twitched a few times. He wanted to continue to thank him, but for some reason, his throat felt as if it was stuffed with bones, making it difficult for him to speak. Dustless radiated a cold aura, as if he was not from this world. Itsuka Shido felt that it was difficult to communicate with him, just like how a human could never communicate with an eagle soaring in the sky. There was a huge gap between them. Were you the one who ambushed me? Night Sword God, Toka's beautiful eyes narrowed slightly, and a dangerous light flickered in her eyes. The current Night Sword God Toka had not been enlightened by Itsuka Shido, so her personality was still very violent. If there was a disagreement, or if there was a suspect, she would not hesitate to kill the other party. Of course, this was not Night Sword God Toka's fault. After all, she had been hunted by AST before, and she had also been hated by humans. She had even been mercilessly hunted down by humans. It was normal for her to hate humans and reject this world. Ambush you? Hearing this, Dustless's eyes suddenly became playful. He stared at Night Sword God Toka for a while, and his eyes were as clear as a microscope. He did not let go of any flaw in Night Sword God Toka. What are you looking at? Night Sword God Toka's pretty face changed slightly, and her tone was very unpleasant. Being stared at by Dustless made her feel extremely uncomfortable, especially with that aggressive gaze. It made Night Sword God Toka feel like she was stripped naked, and her naked body was exposed to Dustless's eyes. In short, Night Sword God Toka felt that her spirit had been violated by Dustless. Ambush you? I just think it's too funny. You know, the moment you opened your mouth, I could have killed you 1,000 times. Dustless spoke frankly, and his words were filled with deep disdain and arrogance. What did you say? Hearing this, Night Sword God Toka's pretty face was filled with hostility. She looked at Dustless with hostility and shook Night Sword God Toka. If you can try. You asked for it. As soon as his voice fell, countless photons floated out of Dustless's body and rushed forward. So fast, Night Sword God Tin Fragrance's pupils shrank as he watched the photon disappear in an instant. He subconsciously swung Fierce Slayer at the flash, and a huge cold light pierced through Dustless's body. Poochie! The saber's momentum was very strong. The attacking light exploded like a puddle of water, scattering everywhere. Is that all? Night Blade God Tin Fragrance frowned slightly. She sensed that Dustless's aura had completely disappeared. Her small lips curled up slightly as she mumbled. As expected, people who like to spout nonsense are pitifully weak. You shouldn't have died so easily, right? Itsuka Kotori clenched her fists when she realized that Dustless had disappeared. Buzz, buzz, buzz. There was a strange ripple in the void, and then the collapsed photons gathered again, quietly gathering behind the Night Blade God's back like ghosts. Little girl, you're too arrogant. Dustless's indifferent tone startled Night Blade God Ten Incense. He quickly turned around and saw Dustless looking back at him. Damn it, isn't he dead? Isn't he the one I just hit? Night Blade God Ten Fragrance widened her eyes and looked at Dustless as if she had seen a ghost. Shoo, shoo, shoo. At the same time, Dustless swung his saber, and a deadly light came at him. Night Blade God Ten Fragrance sensed the danger and quickly backed off. This was the first time she felt such a strange and deadly pressure. Death? As expected, using violence to curb violence, Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she saw Dustless had forced the powerful elf to back off. To be honest, she and Murasame Rain didn't sense the energy wave that belonged to the elf from Dustless's body. In other words, Dustless was just a dangerous human. However, a human from a Confucian school was able to force the elf to back off, and he was even a powerful being like Night Blade God Ten Fragrance. Itsuka Kotori was stunned. Shoo, shoo, shoo. Dustless's heavenly sword of gathering clouds suddenly released a huge golden sword pressure. Puff! Everything that came into contact with the golden light was easily crushed like paper. Boom, boom, boom. The terrifying attack was like the angry roar of the heavens. In the end, it turned into a huge golden light that crushed toward the night blade god Toxiang with a monstrous aura. Gulp. To be honest, this was the first time Night Blade God 10 Fragrance saw such a powerful attack. She stood still and was stunned. Damn it, I could only try. Looking at Dustless with a gloomy gaze, Night Blade God 10 Fragrance's messy hair was covered in bean-sized tears. He tightly gripped his greatsword, Fierce Slayer, with both hands, bursting with a tremendous aura, as if he was going to fight to the death. Buzz, buzz, buzz. The thick light gathered on the sword and slowly became bigger. The tip of the sword even released a burst of impact that even the oxygen in the atmosphere was bounced away. Crack, crack, crack. Even the surface of the ground around them began to crack, revealing a series of ghastly fissures. How rare. Dustless naturally noticed the series of problems that Night Blade God 10 Fragrance caused. He couldn't help but nod in surprise with a hint of admiration on his face. Although Night Blade God 10 Fragrance was young, his strength was not bad. He had traveled through so many worlds. Frankly speaking, this Night Blade God 10 Fragrance in front of him was not bad. He was only 16 years old. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2079. Shoo Shoo Shoo. The attack that Night Sword God Toka had been preparing for was unleashed, and the light flashed toward Chinfan. Boom, boom, boom. As the two slashes clashed, an extremely violent shockwave immediately erupted. The surrounding space and the vast land were all fatally affected, collapsing one after another. A sandstorm swept up in the vast sky. It was a dozen meters tall, and the blue sky was filled with sand and dust. Bang, bang, bang. The air exploded, and the shockwaves from the explosion forced everyone to step back. Damn it! Itsuka Kotori spat. She was also affected by the shockwave, and her mouth was full of sand. So violence can really be used against violence. Dating is so weak. Itsuka Kotori stared at Dustless in disbelief. She stared at Dustless with her cute little face. In contrast to Night Blade God, who looked as if he was about to face a great enemy, Dustless was as calm as a breeze. Anyone could tell who was stronger and who was weaker. I'm not as strong as him. After the first clash, Night Sword God, Toka, tensed up. Although the two attacks had canceled each other out, he was at a disadvantage in terms of scale and power. But it's almost done. Night Sword God, Toka looked at the fierce killer in his hand with a smile on his face. He stuck out his tongue and regained his confidence. Is the last sword almost done? At this moment, Wu Chen's expectant voice suddenly came, and his bored cheeks were aroused a little interest. You know my attack? Hearing this, Night Sword God, Toka widened his eyes in shock. He didn't expect this skinny kid to see through his trump card before he could even use it. Just as he thought, I do know. Dustless's eyes were as clear as water. He said without hiding anything, don't waste my time. Hurry up and use your last attack. Isn't this the reason why you are stalling for time? He glanced at the greatsword in Night Sword God, Toka's hand. It was completely different from before. Not to mention the size of the sword, it was now only 10 meters long. A 10-meter-long sword. It looks scary, but I don't know how powerful it is. Dustless rubbed his chin as he looked at Night Sword God Toka in a different light. The 10-meter-long greatsword shone brightly. Even though he hadn't unsheathed the sword yet, Dustless could feel that he had been locked onto by a terrifying existence. He even felt a slight pain on his skin. Not bad. Wu Chen showed a rare smile and gave a provocative look to the Night Blade God 10 Fragrance. Quickly cut your fire stick over. Let me see what's different about it. Night Sword, don't underestimate me. Hearing this, Night Blade Goddess Toxiang was so angry that the veins on her forehead bulged. She almost lost her grip on the last sword. Night Sword? Have you ever seen such a powerful and domineering fire stick? Preposterous. Go to hell. Enraged, Night Blade God Toxiang slashed out with all his might with his dangerous divine sword. Dustless was powerful, but his mouth was even worse. A massive slash shot out, tearing the surface of the earth to shreds the moment it was unleashed. The slash was filled with an ominous killing intent that could destroy all things. The sword was just like its name, the final sword. Everything that came into contact with it would reveal their final side before they all collapsed. But that wasn't the scariest part. The slash has become bigger. Wu Chen's pupil shrank. The huge slash seemed to have taken steroids. It kept getting stronger and stronger, destroying everything in its path. Finally, it turned into a huge, solid blade that was dozens of meters long, just like the anger of heaven. "Kid, you're dead for sure now." Nightblade God 10 fragrances beamed from ear to ear. Seeing Wu Chen's cautious expression, she immediately smiled proudly. Oh no, Itsuka Kotori was sweating profusely. She stared at Wu Chen as if she could empathize with him. Her petite body was trembling, and her beautiful eyes were filled with fear. The power of Night Sword God Toka's attack was beyond Itsuka Kotori's expectation. "It's not good to be so violent at such a young age," Wu Chen said in a low voice. His thumb-length short black hair was blown to one side by the biting cold sword pressure. The sudden attack was about to tear him apart. Dustless didn't panic in the face of such a brutal attack. His face was as calm as a rock. He raised his right hand. On the tip of his right thumb, a golden ball of light appeared. It was about the size of a fist. It looked ordinary and did not have the slightest lethality. It was just like an ordinary light bulb. It was not elegant at all. Ka. However, the moment the ball of light appeared, the space around it started to twist and turn into a giant whirlpool, as if it was controlled by some mysterious power. At the center of the twisted space was the ball of light that could destroy the world. "What the hell is going on?" Itsuka Kotori murmured. She thought Night Sword God Toka was already powerful enough, but after seeing the ball of light in Dustless's hand, she felt like her world had been turned upside down. Sprites, or whatever, compared to Dustless, were too weak. Wang Su's flash. Dustless flicked his finger and released the ball of light. Kacha! The sharp sound of the air being torn apart continued to resound. Wang Su's flash flew out in a straight line. The space behind it collapsed, and the void was completely annihilated, forming a black and terrifying gully. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2080. Boom, boom, boom. A fierce explosion swept across the area, and the shockwaves shattered the sky. When the shockwaves came into contact with the Night Sword God Toxiang, the latter felt powerless, as if she had met her natural enemy. The high temperature and shockwaves from the void flash vaporized her instantly. Crack, crack, crack. Not only that, even the sky was shattered. The shockwaves from the void flash destroyed layers of space, twisting and shattering it. Boom, boom, boom. Looking up, a black hole of an extremely exaggerated scale was torn out in the sky where Dustless was. It was dark and boundless. The black hole seemed to be connected to the abyss of the universe, and it was filled with a piercing chill. How boring. Dustless shook his head, and a look of disappointment appeared on his face. Night Sword God Toxiang could not even arouse his interest. I lost. Night Sword God Toxiang dropped to her knees and looked at the crack in the sky. Her eyes were dark and empty. This was the first time she had suffered such a crushing defeat. Dustless had almost crushed her to the point where she could not even fight back. She turned her eyes and looked into Dustless's indifferent eyes. Night Sword God Toxiang said to herself in a daze, I lost, will I be killed? Her calm eyes scanned the world around her. For some reason, a hint of reluctance flashed through Yedao Shun Toxiang's eyes. No one was willing to die. Every creature was infatuated with this colorful world, including Wu Chun. He had lived for hundreds of years and had never had the concept of death in his mind. If he could live, no one was willing to die. She slowly walked over and stared at the Night Blade God 10 incense. Wuchen didn't say anything and just looked at her quietly. Are you here to kill me? Night Sword God Toxiang said in a low voice. Kill an elf? At this moment, an extremely astonished voice suddenly sounded, followed by a gust of wind that blocked Night Blade God 10 incense's path. I will not allow it. The black shadow stopped, revealing a young body. Although he was young, his eyes were like torches, shining brightly. There was not the slightest bit of wavering or fear. Itsuka Kodori. Dustless glanced at the girl with the red ponytail and said calmly, I never said I was going to kill her. This matter has nothing to do with me. Is that so? Hearing this, Itsuka Kodori smiled and said, That's good. This girl will be ours from now on. Not us, but mine. Dustless waved his hand and interrupted Itsuka Kodori. He then looked at Toka and said, I don't like to do things that don't benefit me. You don't seem to have anything to compensate me. At this point, Dustless lowered his voice and said flatly, As the saying goes, a gambling debt must be paid with your body. From now on, you're mine. Who wants to be your slave? No way. It was rare that Toka and Itsuka Kodori were on the same side. Both of them rejected Dustless's conditions in unison. Because my fist is the biggest. Is that okay? Dustless looked down at the two girls and said casually, If you want to change the rules, you just have to make your fist bigger than mine one day. Challenge me and defeat me. Then you can change the rules I set. You. Hearing this, Toka and Itsuka Kodori glared at him. Dustless didn't have the style of a strong person. His cold eyes didn't know what it meant to bully the weak. Everything was done according to one's desires. In other words, Dustless needed someone to take care of his daily life. Toka was the perfect candidate. Even though she was stronger and might rebel against Dustless in the future, it didn't matter. From now on, you'll be called Toka. Looking into the girl's eyes, Wu Chen's voice was like a breeze, invading Nightblade God Toka's ears. Nightblade God 10 Fragrance opened his mouth. He wanted to reject the name, but for some reason, his mouth seemed to have been sewn shut. He could not speak normally. That's not a bad name. Itsuka Kodori's eyes turned cold. Her first impression of the name was refreshing. I won't accept it. Toka rejected the name in a fit of pique. Dustless's arrogant tone and the way he looked at others made her very unhappy. You won't accept it? Buzz, buzz, buzz. Who would have thought that as soon as Nightblade God 10 Fragrance's voice fell, Wu Chen's palm emitted a huge light. I hate slaves who are disobedient or like to resist me. Of course, your hands and feet are on your body, so I can't stop you from resisting. But the premise is that you have to pay a heavy price. A threat. It was a blatant and direct threat. You. Toka's expression changed drastically. She stomped her feet in anger. Dustless was obviously threatening her. He was implying that if she resisted him, she would disappear from this world. You can resist me, but I advise you to think about the price you have to pay for challenging me. The lazy tone was like a shot in the arm. Toka's dissatisfaction quickly disappeared. After thinking for a while, it seemed that she had no choice but to agree to Dustless's conditions. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2081. Itsuka Shido stared at Dustless in a daze. His eyes were fixed on Dustless, and he could not hide the shock in his eyes. What kind of freak is this guy? Everyone would feel lost when faced with something that defied the laws of physics, and Itsuka Shido was no exception. His eyes were filled with confusion. The strength that Dustless displayed deeply shocked Ido Shido. He finally realized how insignificant he was. He was simply a small fry that couldn't withstand a single blow. Of course, it was normal to feel this way. After all, the gap between them was too big. One was an ordinary human, and the other was a demon king who had destroyed many worlds. But then again, if we leave her at home, someone will find out sooner or later. Itsuka Kodori's eyes flashed with a hint of worry. Wuchen only used his own strength to suppress Toka Toka. He did not seal her power. If that was the case, the people from AST would find out sooner or later. Fairies could radiate psychic waves, and it was only a matter of time before they found out. So what if we are found out? Dustless looked at its Suka coterie and said calmly, "We will deal with whatever comes our way. Don't worry." In fact, AST was already scared of Dustless, and they were afraid that they would not be able to escape. 3 days later, in the morning breeze was strong, and the sun was shining brightly. Gulu Gulu. In its Suka coterie's house, Toka Toka was gobbling up all the food on the table. She even ate Dustless and Coterie's portions. Dustless, who just came out of the bedroom, was speechless. He looked at Toka Toka, not knowing whether to laugh or cry. He already knew that Toka Toka was a super glutton, and now he knew that she lived up to her reputation. Sigh, its Suka coterie also sighed and said, "I plan to send Toka to school to learn about human society. I want her to fall in love with this world." If he wanted to rope someone in, he would first have to make her agree with this world. To put it simply, he had to brainwash her. "I object. I reject your conditions." Wuchen rejected its Suka coterie's offer without hesitation. He said coldly, "You want to send her to school? The spiritual waves radiating from her body will be recognized sooner or later. She's just like a lamb entering a tiger's den. How foolish." And Dustless sat lazily on the sofa and snapped his fingers. 10 incense. "I got it." Hearing Dustless's call, Toxiang immediately put down the food in her hand and ran over. She circled behind Dustless and massaged Dustless's shoulders. Her slender hands circled around Dustless's neck and gently kneaded it. Her technique was light and unique. Not bad. Dustless closed his eyes and nodded, occasionally revealing a satisfied smile. He seemed to be enjoying the service of the Night Blade God. "You bastard!" Its Suka coterie's mouth twitched when she saw this. She looked at the obedient Night Blade God and couldn't help but complain. "Can't you just beat him up? Show him your power as an elf." "This servant is so obedient." Dustless turned his head and looked at the Night Blade God who was massaging his shoulders. He was quite satisfied. The Night Blade God 10 Fragrances was extremely obedient. Moreover, she didn't have a bad temper. As long as she was given delicious food, she would immediately become obedient to Wuchen. Wouldn't it be crazy to send such a good servant to school? "Anyway, I don't want Toka to go to school." Dustless picked up the snacks on the sofa and repeated, "Humph, you're just afraid that no one will serve you if Toka leaves." Its Suka coterie put her hands on her hips and looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction. This guy actually got an elf to massage his shoulders. He was too extravagant. Think what you want. Dustless ignored its Suka coterie's pestering and said lazily, "Girl, don't forget that I am the one who subdued her with my strength. You have no right to interfere. You want to burn the bridge after crossing the river?" Its Suka coterie stared at Dustless angrily. Her tone was full of dissatisfaction. "Forget it, Commander. There is nothing wrong with this." Seeing that Dustless wasn't giving in, Murasame Rain had to persuade him. It would be bad if Toka causes trouble in school. Leaving Night Blade God Toka at home might be boring, but at least Dustless would keep an eye on her. Nothing serious would happen. "The weather looks good. Let's go out and have some fun." Dustless stretched his body and looked up at the bright sunlight outside the window. A faint smile appeared on his face. It wasn't easy to come to a new world, so it was only right for him to go out and have some fun. Anyone would feel bored even if they stayed at home. Go out and have some fun. Its Suka coterie and Murasame Rain's eyes lit up when they heard this. Don't get the wrong idea. This is not a date. Besides, I don't have the ability to seal elves like Itsuka Shido. Your plan is just nonsense. When Wuchen saw their joyful faces, he immediately understood that they had misunderstood. He couldn't help but shake his head. But even so, bringing Night Blade God Toka out to have some fun wasn't a bad idea. Dustless had to go out anyway, so it was safer to leave her alone at home. Who knows what kind of trouble she might cause. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters. 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2082. After all, he still had to stay in this world for a while, and he couldn't stay at home for a long time, so he had to go out for a walk. This guy is still not cooperating at all. Coterie 5 Rivers frowned, and her delicate little face was particularly ugly. Commander, it's useless even if Dustless cooperates. Murasame Rain took a sip of coffee and looked at Dustless and explained, even if Dustless can increase the favorability of the elves, it's useless. If it's Shido, it's fine. As for Dustless, it's a pity. I've investigated his body countless times. He doesn't have Shido's ability to seal the elves. That's true. Hearing this, Itsuka Kotori calmed down and muttered to herself. Seems like I still need to rely on Shido. The dialogue between Murasame Rain and Itsuka Koto was very subtle and weak. Others could only see the lips biting, but Wu-chan was clear about it, and he even heard it all without missing a word. I don't have the ability? What a joke. Wu-chan smiled but didn't say anything. He closed his eyes and laughed in his heart. It's undeniable that I don't have the magical ability to seal energy like Itsuka Shido, but I have the system. Thinking of this, Wu-chan grinned. So many years had passed, and he hadn't used the system during this period. The reason was that his strength had reached such a level that the presence of a system was almost negligible. In most cases, the function of the system was limited to transmigration. Dustless's system's ability was also very simple. In the system, he could train at will. As long as he killed the opponent, he could obtain all of the opponent's abilities. Otherwise, if he couldn't defeat the opponent, he would die. That kid Shido. He looked up and glanced at the picture frame on the wall. The brother and sister in the picture were Itsuka Kotori and Itsuka Shido. It's too easy to kill you. Dustless shook his head. Although Shido Itsuka was quite capable, his combat prowess was nothing to be proud of. If Dustless Itsuka killed him in the system, he would be able to obtain all of his abilities, such as the special ability to seal spirits. Of course, the Ido Shido in the system had nothing to do with the Ido Shido in this world. The Ido Shido was created by the system consciousness, Ling Air. Even if it was killed, it had nothing to do with the Ido Shido in this world. There's nothing in this world that I can't get. Lazily sitting on the sofa, Dustless immersed himself in the system world and began to practice Ido Shido. Time passed quickly, and in the blink of an eye, half an hour had passed. During this time, Dustless had also completed his training. He had successfully killed Shido Itoka in the system and obtained his unique ability to seal the power of spirits. The reason why it was so fast was because Shido's strength was too weak. He was weak in the real world, and he was also weak in the system world and the real world. He was easily killed by Dustless. Therefore, Dustless also obtained Shido's ability to seal spirits. Strange, at the moment when she went out, Murasame Rain frowned, and the dark circles on both sides of her eyes disappeared. Her eyes were full of wisdom and strangeness that had never been seen before. What's wrong, Rain? Itsuka Kotori looked over and saw the strange look on her face. She smiled and joked, "Don't tell me you detected elven psychic waves from Dustless?" For a long time, Dustless was thought to be an elf, but strangely, no psychic wave was detected. Therefore, whether Dustless was a human or an elf had always been a mystery. That's not it. Murasame Rain shook her head and said strangely, Ratatoskr Base just sent a message. It seems that they detected the same physical data from Dustless as Shido. Kacha! After she said that, Itsuka Kotori's eyes widened, and even the lollipop in her mouth was bitten into pieces. You mean, how is this possible? Why didn't they detect it before? Could it be that this kid was hiding? Forget it, it doesn't matter. Now that Dustless has the same physical data as Shido, that means... Itsuka Kotori's heart suddenly skipped a beat, and she immediately looked at Murasame Rain in disbelief. She already understood what it meant. You are right, Commander. Mirasame Rain's back was also struggling. Her head was dizzy, and she said inconceivably, I'm afraid that Wuchen has experienced some unknown transformation and also has the ability to seal the power of elves like Shido. In the end, Mirasame Rain's mind was also in a mess. She was responsible for collecting Dustless's data every day. Half an hour ago, Dustless didn't have this ability. Who would have thought that after only half an hour, this guy had such an amazing change? He inexplicably had the ability to seal spirits. This was too much. Don't be surprised, this is nothing. Don't say it's just a trick of Itsuka Shido. Turning his head and staring at the two dumbfounded people, Dustless disdainfully curled his lips, full of ridicule, and proudly said in his heart, as long as I want, I can also have the so-called elf's ability in an instant. No matter who it was, as long as he practiced in the system and killed the opponent, Dustless would get all the abilities of the opponent. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2083. Dustless was so invincible. Any ability of the enemy, as long as he wanted, could be obtained instantly. But the premise was that he must defeat the enemy in the system until he killed the enemy. Only then could he obtain the enemy's ability. In this case, Itsuka Kotori's gem eyes were shining. She glanced at Mirasame Rain and asked eagerly, how much is the favorability of 10 fragrances for Wuchen? Favorability toward Dustless? Mirasame Rain lowered her head and pondered for a moment, and finally said, about 70%. At the beginning, Toka's favorability toward Dustless was close to 0, and even reached a negative level. But then, Mirasame Rain's voice was full of helplessness, and she smiled bitterly. The temptation of food is always invincible. Toka followed Dustless for a few days and ate a few days of delicious food, so her favorability toward him also skyrocketed. Is that so? I can only say that Dustless is lucky. Itsuka Kotori also sighed, and then she waved her hand and said, it seems that we don't need to do anything. Dustless is enough to take care of Toka. Seems like it. On the other side, Dustless and Toka were walking together. Look, Dustless, I want to eat that bread. Is this a hot dog? Give me 10 servings. I want to eat dessert. On the bustling street, there were all kinds of dazzling food on both sides. The fragrance was overflowing. Even if Wu Chun had no appetite, he would feel hungry when he smelled the tempting fragrance, not to mention the Big Foodie Night Sword God 10 fragrance. Fortunately, Itsuka Kotori gave Dustless a lot of yen before they went out, so he didn't have to worry about money. This tastes really good. On the bench in the park, Dustless and Toka sat together, both of them holding ice cream in their hands. And Toka was holding a plastic bag full of food. Yes, not bad. Really not bad. I want to come out and play again next time. Yi Saber God Juxiang was overjoyed. Her delicate little face revealed a happy smile. She was very happy. Seriously, Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry after seeing this scene. As the saying goes, contentment brings joy. Just some food was enough to make the Dark Saber God so happy that he couldn't tell north from south. That an extremely unfamiliar voice suddenly sounded from behind. It was soft and gentle, making people unable to help but want to protect her. You are. Dustless subconsciously turned around to look, and his eyes were a little dazed. A cute face popped out from the dense grass. Her skin was as white as snow, and her long blue hair gave people the impression that she was very beautiful. Her bright eyes were dotted with tears. Her pitiful appearance and timid tone made people want to protect her. Is this the four bonsai? Dustless muttered to himself in astonishment. His eyes widened. He did not expect to encounter Yoshino here. But what's with this outfit? Dustless frowned as he looked at the four bonsai. The girl's entire body was black, and her little face was also black. Even her clothes had traces of burn. Could it be that she was being hunted down? Dustless secretly guessed. The four bonsai was not good at fighting, and she had never dealt a heavy blow to the AST members who attacked her. The word kindness was written on her porcelain doll face. Could it be that she's hungry? Seeing the girl staring at the ice cream in his hand, Dustless's expression was rather strange. He immediately snatched the snack from Yi Saber God Juxiang's arms and handed it to the four bonsai. Hey, Dustless, that's mine. A foodie was indeed a foodie. Yi Saber God Juxiang immediately stomped his feet when the food was snatched away. The spiritual waves around his body also began to go berserk. He stared at Dustless as if he had killed his father. I'll buy 10 times the amount later and return it to you. Dustless glanced at Yi Saber God Juxiang indifferently, and then slowly walked towards the four bonsai. Are you for real? The anger on his face immediately disappeared, and Yi Saber God Juxiang's face was filled with joy. His impression of Dustless skyrocketed. That's a bit too much. Itsuka Kodari and the others who were secretly observing the situation were speechless. They didn't know whether to laugh or cry when they found out that Dustless's impression of Yi Saber God had dropped from 70% to 20% after he snatched her snacks. However, after Dustless promised to buy 10 times the amount of snacks for Juxiang, her impression of Yi Saber God Juxiang shot up like a rocket. Not only did it exceed 70%, it even reached 80%. This foodie is so easy to win over Itsuka Kodari's side. She had a complicated expression on her face. It wasn't clear whether she thought that Dustless was lucky or that Yi Saber God Juxiang was too stupid. Excuse me, are these all for me? Looking at the snacks handed over by Wu Chun, Siwon looked at Wu Chun submissively. Her tone was very low. Eat as much as you want. Dustless smiled and nodded. He stroked the girl's hair and asked, You're an elf, right? How did you end up in such a sorry state? You know that I'm an elf? For Bonsai's food suddenly stopped in front of her mouth. She looked at Dustless hesitantly. She was even a little cautious. After all, humans hated elves. It was normal for four bonsai to be cautious. Don't be afraid. Dustless waved his hand and pointed at Juxiang. She's called Yi Saber God Juxiang. She's an elf just like you. I'm different from the other ASTs. I'm your friend. Are you telling the truth? The girl's tone was still light, but it was obvious that her impression of Dustless had improved. He had to admit that children were easy to fool. Of course it's true. 10 fragrances is an example. Glancing at Night Blade, God 10 fragrances, Wu Chun signaled her to release her power. Hum. Even though Juxiang was unhappy, she still nodded and released a powerful wave of energy. It was the psychic wave that only elves could release. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2084. Is she really an elf? Their timid eyes stared straight at the Night Blade God Toxiang. Perhaps because they were the same species and could understand each other, the four elements felt a sense of belonging to the Night Blade God Toxiang. Night Blade God 10 Fragrances' eyes also glowed with a sense of belonging to the same kind, a feeling of mutual appreciation. That. Looking at Dustless's eyes, Yansun gritted his teeth and said, Can you help me find a white doll? Doll? Wu Chan frowned. Only then did he remember that there was a doll in the four elements called the Four Kainai. You lost it when AST was chasing you. Night Sword God, Toka, asked angrily. Those bastards just won't go away. They're nothing compared to Kodari. Of course they are. Wu Chun was non-committal about this. Then he added, But those two organizations aren't good people. Are you saying that Kodari is not a good person? Toka was stunned and looked at Dustless in surprise. No. Dustless shook his head and said softly, I'm saying that the organizations behind them are not good people. No matter what kind of group they are, as long as they are related to organizations, there is no such thing as a clean organization. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. At the same time, a sharp sound came from the sky, mysterious falling objects covered in flames were whizzing toward them. There were so many of them that it was dazzling. That is, Dustless's eyes opened slightly, and mysterious objects a few hundred meters away suddenly became very clear. Are those missiles? Those AST members are really boring. Dustless sighed. Then he frowned and said, "No wonder they have to seal the power of the elves. Otherwise, the psychic waves emitted from their bodies would be really troublesome. Not sealing the power of the elves means that they will emit psychic waves at any time, which can be easily detected by AST. Disappear." Dustless's eyes flashed with a black luster, his pupils focused on the large number of missiles. Then he blinked slightly. Amaterasu. In an instant, the oncoming missiles were engulfed by the black, demonic flames. The sky was filled with black flames, and the missiles formed a black wall of flames in the direction they were heading. Boom, boom, boom. After a while, the void exploded, and the sky was filled with flames. The black smoke was more than 10 meters high, and a large cluster of flames connected together. It was quite a spectacular sight. "Thank you." Janssen stood up and bowed to Dustless very seriously. Perhaps because of her young age, Janssen was quite timid in everything she did, and her shining eyes contained some fear. "Don't be so polite." Wuchen smiled and rubbed Sinai's hair. He comforted her gently. "Anyway, AST will arrest my servant even if you don't exist." "Your servant?" Sinai looked at Night Blade God 10 Incense with a strange look. He already knew who he was talking about. Hey, who's your servant?" "I'm not." Hearing this, Toka immediately looked at Dustless with dissatisfaction and said seriously, "I'm not your servant. I'm just temporarily staying in your house. No, Coteries' house temporarily." Toka was very unwilling to resist. Dustless said that she was his servant in front of Janssen, and she felt embarrassed, so of course she had to refute this guy. At this time, Janssen tugged at Dustless's sleeve and said softly, "I want to be your servant too. Can you help me find Janssen?" Seriously, this guy's luck is too good. Itsuka Kotori, who was secretly observing, was speechless. She was shocked to find that just because Dustless had destroyed the missile attack and helped the 4 elementals, her favorability towards Dustless had skyrocketed. Janssen's heart is weak, and she's just a child, so it's easy for her to rely on others. Rain Murasame was quite clear, and it was normal for her to have a favorable impression of someone who saved her. It was easy for a child to rely on others, especially a helpless child. "What's the favorability of this elf team, Chun now?" Kotori asked curiously as she twitched the lollipop in her mouth. "Around 60%. Rain Murasame nodded, and then said seriously, "If Dustless can really help her find her lost doll, her favorability would at least reach 80% or even 90%. "Really?" Kotori was stunned, and then she waved her hand and said, "We seem to be superfluous to Dustless. He doesn't seem to be good at dating, but he can always inadvertently win the favorability of the other party. Some things are just so magical." Ray Murasame also said with emotion, and it could only be said that it was fate. "Damn it, why is that kid still haunting us? Last time when we carried out the mission to kill the princess, we also encountered this unlucky guy." As expected, the AST members who were rushing over noticed Dustless. Their expressions changed drastically, especially Daybreak Prairie Fire and Kite One Origami. Their delicate faces froze one after another. "Captain, do we still need to continue the mission?" Toby Origami asked with a rare lack of confidence. Liaozi's mouth twitched a few times, and then she said helplessly, "The mission ends here. When we go back, we will say that the enemy escaped. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2085. The enemy ran away. The members of AST rolled their eyes when they heard this. The enemy was so close, yet she claimed that Dustless and the others ran away. Wasn't she lying through her teeth? However, even so, The other members of AST remained silent. It was obvious that they agreed with Blazing Sun's approach. Very well. When we return, report according to what I said. You guys discuss it and don't say anything wrong. Blazing Sun heaved a sigh of relief. She felt that the mountain hanging on her back had disappeared without a trace. It was not that Blazing Sun was afraid of Dustless, but the difference in strength between the two sides was too great. It was as simple as a cat toying with a mouse. The last time they captured the princess, Night Sword God Toka, they were played by Dustless. But he's really strange. Toichi Origami stared at Dustless, her pupils dilated slightly. Where did this guy come from? I've never detected psychic waves, but the density of the two elves beside him is extremely high. This, Blazing Sun's expression was also very strange. She could not help but mutter, "No psychic waves? Could it be that we were wrong from the beginning? Is he a human? But, since when are humans so powerful? Since when were humans able to roam the sky without the help of external forces? Since when were weak humans able to defeat the fully equipped AST? It was reasonable to say that Dustless was not an elf. By the way, I have a new mission to assign. Blazing Sun's eyes flashed. Blazing Sun's gaze swept across the members of AST one by one. Seeing the cowering eyes of her team members, she could not help but sigh in disappointment. It's difficult to achieve great things. Blazing Sun looked up at the sky and sighed. Blazing Sun's gaze turned to Toichi Origami, who had a calm expression. She then said with satisfaction, "Origami, that kid, you'll be in charge of monitoring him from now on?" "Me?" When Yue Origami heard this, her fair face showed a rare emotional fluctuation. She pouted her sandalwood lips. Thinking of Wuchen's character, she had a sad feeling that she wanted to cry, but had no tears. It's Suka Kotori's home. Even though Kotori had expected some progress in the relationship between Dustless and Dustless, she didn't expect Dustless to bring her back. "You didn't even ask for my permission to bring her back? Do you really think of Wuhi's family as your own?" Itsuka Kotori always had a lollipop in her mouth. With her arms akimbo, she stared at Dustless, who was sleeping on the sofa. This guy was really too arrogant. He brought a person back and didn't even greet him, the owner. It was simply outrageous. "This entire planet is mine." Wu Chan stretched and casually said, "Not to mention your family. Wait until you can defeat me one day. Then you can come and fight against me. The strong will only use their fists to talk, and the weak will only talk arrogantly." What an unreasonable guy. Itsuka Kotori's jade-like finger trembled as she pointed at the shameless Wu Chun. She could only stare helplessly. Looking at that annoying face, she couldn't wait to slap it. Itsuka Kotori opened her mouth and was about to mock Dustless, but then she heard a calm voice. "Sealing the power of the power, so that she can only feel shyness and other emotions? Why are you suddenly asking this?" Itsuka Kotori looked at Dustless strangely and said seriously, "Only Shido had this ability before, but now." Itsuka Kotori was also confused. When she checked Dustless's body, only he could seal the power of spirits. But strangely, when she checked Dustless's body, she got the same data as Itsuka Shido. In other words, Dustless could seal the power of spirits like Itsuka Shido. It's better to seal their power. Dustless looked at Toka and Yoshino and said impatiently, "It's not a good thing to be too eye-catching, you know what I mean, right?" Itsuka Kotori nodded. If you didn't seal their power, it would attract a bunch of cockroaches. But it's too embarrassing. Dustless's expression changed and his tone became strange. Let's just go with the flow. There were some things he wasn't good at, and he was already a few hundred years old. Time had already worn away his inner desires, so he didn't want to take the initiative to flirt with girls. Dong dong dong. At this moment, there was a dull knock on the door. Itsuka Shido is back. Dustless frowned and looked unhappy. "I'll go take a look." Itsuka Kotori went to open the door in her slippers, but the person she saw made her frown. Toka Origami. Looking at the person in front of her, Itsuka Kotori was depressed and thought, "Is this guy going to fight me? We're neighbors from now on. I'm just here to say hi." The girl's face was expressionless, as if she was talking about something normal. In fact, Toko Origami had been peeking at Dustless. Itsuka Kotori wasn't her target. Itsuka Kotori felt like she was being ignored. Toko Origami was talking to her, but she kept peeking at Dustless. Speaking of which, how did you become our neighbor? Itsuka Kotori raised her eyebrows as she recalled the main point of the story. You guys sure put in a lot of effort to keep an eye on me. Dustless sighed, but he didn't mind. AST was a government agency, and it was easy for them to buy the house near Itsuka Kotori's house. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2086. How boring. Dustless shook his head. He laughed at AST's actions. In reality, he was just living the life of an ordinary person. He did not do anything out of the ordinary. Spying on them was pointless. If one day Dustless was annoyed, he could just kill them. It was like sending a lamb to a tiger's den. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Yuichi Origami left the sentence, then turned around and left, quite at ease. Live in peace with you around? Itsuka Kotori snorted disapprovingly, treating Tabichi Origami's words as a joke. She then muttered to herself, with AST around, can this world be peaceful? The organizations behind you are all the same. Dustless looked at Itsuka Kotori and continued to drink his tea. There was no such thing as a clean organization. Bang! Itsuka Kotori slammed the door in annoyance. Those locusts from AST just won't go away. About what you said yesterday, I've changed my mind. Itsuka Kotori was stunned when she heard Dustless's cold voice. She looked at him blankly. She did not know what this guy was trying to do. About what happened yesterday, Itsuka Kotori frowned. She lowered her head and thought about what they talked about yesterday. Her eyes lit up, and she said in surprise, You're really going to go to school in Toka? Itsuka Kotori had always wanted Toka to join the school. She hoped that she would be able to integrate into human society and learn about human culture so that everyone could live in peace. Unfortunately, Dustless did not agree, so the matter was left unsettled. Until now, when Dustless suddenly spoke, Itsuka Kotori was surprised. I'm not as stubborn as you think. Wu-chan looked at Itsuka Kotori seriously, and a strange light flashed in his eyes. Then, he stated his condition. However, I have to join that school. You want to be a student too? Itsuka Kotori's face froze. She looked at Dustless suspiciously. She felt that this guy was up to something. No, forget about being a student. I'd rather be a teacher. Dustless shook his head. Forget about being a student. He was already a few hundred years old. It would be ridiculous for him to be a student. No one was qualified to teach him. The reason why Dustless chose to become a teacher was actually because he had his own goals. Since he had promised to help the four elements find the lost four Kanai, he would definitely complete it. At that time, the four Kanai were being hunted down by AST, and they were lost in the process. It was likely that the four Kanai was in the hands of AST members. Since Kaichi Origami and Dustless were in the same school, it was natural for Dustless to contact her. 3 days later, in the morning, Dustless easily got a job as a physical education teacher. As for other subjects, Dustless was not suitable for it, nor was he interested in it. The atmosphere of the school is really annoying. Entering the school again, Dustless didn't have any emotions. The only thing left was disgust. A centuries-old figure stepping into the school again was a really unpleasant feeling. Look, who is that? He seems to be walking towards the physical education teacher's office. Could it be the new physical education teacher? This time, the principal finally has a conscience. He finally found a handsome physical education teacher. The group of students stared at Dustless in astonishment. Some of them even showed an expression of infatuation, and there were quite a few of them. Dustless felt helpless. He couldn't help but sigh. Sometimes, being handsome was a sin. Hey, you're the new physical education teacher, right? At this moment, a rather light voice suddenly sounded. It was very pleasant to the ears, as pleasant as the sound of nature. The seductive voice made people want to hurry up and strike up a conversation as if it was filled with magic. "Who is it?" Curious, Dustless looked back. He had heard too many pleasant voices. The only thing that surprised him was that this pleasant voice sounded familiar. "It's you." A graceful figure appeared in front of his eyes. An unexpected figure appeared in front of him. Dustless's pupils suddenly shrunk slightly, and a strong sense of disbelief flashed through his eyes. "Isn't this Tokisaki Kurumi? Why is she in this school now?" According to the development of the original work, it should be some time later. Dustless's face was full of puzzlement, and his brain power was somewhat overdrawn. "It seems that my arrival has caused a butterfly effect. Some things have changed," Dustless muttered, and at the same time, he glanced at the smiling girl. Her appearance was peerless, her temperament was bewitching, and her eyes were like spring water. Her every move exuded charm, and between her frown and smile, one's thoughts seemed to be controlled by her, and one could not help but follow her thoughts. What a living seductress! Dustless sighed in his heart. Even though he had a calm mind for many years, he could not help but be aroused. To be able to make a centuries-old monster like Dustless feel desire, it was enough to show how charming Tokisaki Kurumi was. Phew! After taking a deep breath, Dustless's heart calmed down, and his eyes regained some clarity. Then, under Dustless's puzzled gaze, Tokisaki Kurumi slightly bowed to him politely. "I'm also a new transfer student. Teacher, please take care of me. My name is Tokisaki Kurumi, and I'm an elf. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2087. The only thing that surprised Dustless was that Tokisaki Kurumi actually took the initiative to approach him. Dustless didn't think that he was her target. This guy seems to want to fuse with Itsuka Shido. Staring at the smiling girl, Dustless frowned slightly. Her smile was like a spring breeze, making people want to open their hearts to her and confide in her. Not to mention being wary of her, it was a feeling of wanting to bow down to her. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes narrowed into crescents. Her smile was sincere and polite. If Dustless wasn't a transmigrator, he might have been fooled by Tokisaki Kurumi. The girl's bright and gentle smile made it hard for people to doubt her. "That's right. I'm your new physical education teacher. What can I do for you?" Dustless's tone was indifferent. There was even a hint of rejection and disgust. As the saying goes, a weasel pays a visit to a chicken with bad intentions. Tokisaki Kurumi was exactly like that. She took the initiative to talk to Dustless for no good reason. Dustless couldn't even be polite to someone who had designs on him. What's with this guy's attitude? That's right. Don't tell me he's putting on an act for others. He's too pretentious. The surrounding students saw this scene and felt injustice for Tokisaki Kurumi. From their point of view, for such a cute girl to take the initiative to talk to Dustless, this guy's ancestors must have burned incense and prayed to the Bodhisattva for protection. The heavens must have given Dustless face. But now his indifferent attitude made everyone jealous. This guy is too insensible. Isn't he just a little handsome? Why is he putting on airs? The surrounding students looked at Dustless unhappily and couldn't help but curse him. This guy actually dared to treat a gentle beauty like Tokisaki Kurumi coldly. He really deserved a beating. This bunch of idiots. Dustless was speechless when he saw everyone looking at him like he was an idiot. It would be fine if Tokisaki Kurumi was here to strike up a conversation, but it was clear that she had ill intentions. She was about to swallow him alive, yet he was still smiling at her so foolishly. Wasn't that an idiot? This guy, Tokisaki Kurumi, was also in a daze. To be honest, she was very confident in her appearance. When she took the initiative to talk to others, they would usually be overjoyed. Only Dustless was an exception. Staring at Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's interest was piqued. "Sensei, may I know your name?" Tokisaki Kurumi bowed slightly and maintained her gentle smile. Dustless glanced at her, nodded and said, "My name is Dustless. I'll be the physical education teacher of this school from now on." If there's nothing else, I'll leave first. Ouch! At this moment, Tokisaki Kurumi's face suddenly changed. Her rosy face instantly turned as white as snow. She looked extremely weak, as if she was sick. "You're not feeling well." Dustless frowned and reminded her in a serious tone. "If you're not feeling well, you should rest at home." Dustless sneered in his heart. "Isn't this a little too fast? You were fine before, and now you're sick?" "Sorry, I've been anemic since I was young. Sometimes I feel dizzy." Tokisaki Kurumi revealed an apologetic look and shyly looked at Dustless. "Sensei, why don't you help me to the infirmary?" "Infirmary?" Wu-chan frowned slightly. Soon after, he glanced at the weak young lady in an extremely bored manner. Subsequently, he left in a carefree manner under everyone's stunned gazes. "Sorry, I don't have time, and I don't know where the infirmary is. Please find someone else." After saying that, Dustless's figure gradually disappeared into the crowd, leaving behind a dumbfounded Tokisaki Kurumi. "This guy's called Dustless, huh? Interesting. This is the first time I've seen someone who isn't interested in me." Tokisaki Kurumi licked her lips as a strange light flashed in her eyes. Prey that liked to struggle was actually the most interesting. Those who meekly submitted to adversity were, on the other hand, boring. Other than Itsuka Shido, I didn't expect there to be another interesting guy. "I think he's the PE teacher in my class." Tokisaki Kurumi softly muttered as she looked at Dustless's back. Her gem-like eyes blossomed with beautiful colors. Despite being rejected by Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi's delicate face didn't show the slightest bit of disappointment. Instead, she was grinning from ear to ear as if she had found a fun toy and skipped away. In fact, it was just as Dustless thought. Tokisaki Kurumi came to this school for its Tsukashido. She dreamed of becoming one with him. What a boring woman. Although you're pretty, you think too highly of yourself. Dustless looked back at the girl's figure. Despite being separated by a sea of people, Tokisaki Kurumi's figure was clearly exposed. Dustless couldn't help but shake his head. Dustless has seen many beautiful women. Although Tokisaki Kurumi was like a poison that made people want to put their hands in front of their mouths, hundreds of years of experience had already obliterated some of the primitive ambitions in Dustless's heart. He only had one impression of Tokisaki Kurumi. She was very ordinary. Moreover, in Dustless's opinion, Tokisaki Kurumi was an unmistakable jinx. Whoever she looked for would be unlucky, as if they were possessed by bad luck. Dustless wasn't talking nonsense. She would only target people that she was interested in, and those that Tokisaki Kurumi was interested in had all turned into corpses. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2088. In fact, Tokisaki Kurumi didn't take the initiative to talk to Dustless. She had her own intentions. Before this, Tokisaki Kurumi had inquired about Itsuka Shido. Unfortunately, for some unknown reason, Itsuka Shido was kicked out of his home. As for the reason, the instigator was none other than Wu-chan. Tokisaki Kurumi had always been puzzled about the reason. Until today, she was still puzzled. Itsuka Shido was such an important person, yet he was kicked out of his home. She was curious about the reason behind it. I will see through your conspiracy sooner or later." Tokisaki Kurumi no longer hesitated and walked toward the school building. The farce came to an end. On the other side, "Thank you, Mr. Principal. Take care, I won't see you out." In an empty school building, Dustless sent the principal off with a smile. He then turned around and stared at the beautiful girl with dark circles under her eyes. Pardon me for asking, but does it have anything to do with you that I'm a PE teacher? I say, aren't you guys overstepping your boundaries?" Dustless looked at the silver-haired girl and asked curiously. Taking a closer look, this person's appearance was rather perfect, and her figure was not bad either. Her breasts were curvaceous, and her delicate white skin was tinged with red. Her pink lips were as fragrant as the fragrance of roses, making people unable to resist the urge to go up and take a bite. However, the only flaw was the dark circles under her eyes, which seriously affected her beauty. Rain, you can go back. There's nothing for you to do here. Also, tell Itsuka Kotori to mind her own business. Dustless waved his hand and impatiently ordered her to leave. He then said the 4 elemental plushie might be in Tokichi origami in AST. I'll leave after I get it. However, Murasame Rain just smiled and didn't care. From now on, I'll be your assistant. Please give me your guidance. Little Chun. No, Dustless Mr. Dustless. Let's get along peacefully in the future. Murasame Rain looked at Dustless's eyes and finally quickly changed her words. If she called Dustless Little Chun, she didn't know why. She always felt very strange. Even though Dustless looked young and immature, the vicissitudes of life in his eyes and his carefree attitude towards everything did not seem like something a youth should possess. Assistant. Dustless rolled his eyes and said snappily, do whatever you want. I've already asked you to go back. Don't complain to me if anything happens in the future. Then, Wu Chun sat at his desk and flipped through today's class schedule. Coincidentally, he found that the next PE class was Itoka Shido's class. You're giving me a pillow when I'm sleepy. Maybe I can resign and go home after a day as a PE teacher. Dustless stretched out, and a few playful arcs appeared on his face. It's good to tease young people occasionally. Looking at the playground outside the window, Dustless said to himself, you're not that old. Murasame Rain didn't know whether to laugh or cry. Dustless looked like he was only 18 or 19 years old. He was very young, but he spoke like he was young and mature. He gave people the feeling of a super old monster coming out of the coffin. By the way, it's worth mentioning that Toka also entered the school, and she is in the same class as Shido. Murasame Rain suddenly said, this should be arranged by Kotori and Itsuka, right? Frowning slightly, Dustless's tone was a bit low, and a strange color flashed on his cheeks. His bright eyes were flickering with thought-provoking light. You shouldn't be. As if discovering a new world, Murasame Rain looked at Dustless with a very shocked look. Suddenly, she smiled and teased Dustless. You shouldn't be jealous of Shido and Toka being in the same class. Really, I thought you were a serious monk before. It turns out that you also have 7 emotions and 6 desires. Jealous. Wu Chen laughed involuntarily. What was there in this worthless world that was worthy of his jealousy? What was there that he couldn't get? Was there a need to be jealous of Shido? What was so special about him? Even if he had the unique ability to seal spirits, Dustless got it. Being jealous of Shido was completely empty. What I'm worried about is, walking to the window, Wu Chen looked at the rows of teaching buildings not far away and suddenly smiled. I want to tell you that the relationship between Toka and Itoka Shido is very bad. I just hope that Toka won't suddenly pull out a sword to kill Itoka Shido after seeing him. Murasame Rain was stunned by Dustless's answer. After thinking about it carefully, what Dustless said was not unreasonable. When Ido Shido attacked Toka for the first time, it angered him. If it wasn't for Dustless, Ido Shido would have been killed by Toka. In fact, it was just as Dustless had guessed. In the classroom on the other side, Toka had just met Itoka Shido, and the two instantly had sparks. Why are you here? The Night Sword God, Toka glared at Itoka Shirdao with displeasure. When Itoka Shirdao started sweating, she said angrily, being with a loser like you is really bad luck. What kind of evil thing did Shido do? Itsuka Kotori, who was in charge of monitoring Toka, was speechless. She was shocked to find that before meeting Shido, Toka's good mood was around 80%, but after meeting Shido, it almost dropped to 0. Did I offend you? It's none of my business. Itoka Shido looked at the angry Night Sword God, Toka, with a sad face. He couldn't help but curse in his heart. He felt like he had been shot while lying down. He hadn't done anything to provoke this fierce girl. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2089. Go Shido wanted to cry, but had no tears. He said that he really didn't provoke Yato Toho, but he didn't know why Toho was against him, which really made Go Shido angry. It seemed that I was right. These two people are really difficult to get along. Dustless's eyes narrowed into a crescent moon, and the corners of his mouth raised gently, with a faint gloating smile on his face. Although the distance was quite far, for him who had Sharingan, this was not a big problem. It was just a small matter. It was worth mentioning that the development of the current world was not the world of the original work. The encounter between Go Shido and Yato Toho was completely ruined by Dustless, and the relationship between the two was extremely unpleasant. Of course, all of this was because of Wu Chen's mischief. They were originally a pair of immortal companions, yet they'd already become natural enemies that couldn't tolerate each other. All of this is because of you. Murasame Rain snorted discontentedly, and there was a rare trace of blame on her tired cheeks. Because of me? Hearing this, Dustless snorted and said, maybe it's because of me, but please don't forget, if it wasn't because of me, this city would have been destroyed by Yato Toho. That's right. Murasame Rain opened her mouth, and her throat seemed to be stuffed with a piece of bone, and it was difficult to continue to speak. She was speechless by Dustless's words. Dustless's words may be a bit alarmist, but it was undeniable that this was an out-and-out fact. It's one thing to be strong, but Wu Chun is really eloquent. Murasame Rain sighed, and then sighed helplessly. Now Yato Toho was still angry, so it was better not to provoke her. I don't seem to have offended you. Inside the classroom, Itsuka Shido looked at Toka with fear. To be honest, he was really scared by her power. After all, one was an elf, and the other was a human. Also, Itsuka Shido had seen the battle between Dustless and Toka Shido. Toka Shido was terrified. That night, Sword God, the teacher couldn't stand it anymore. Just as he was about to stop the two of them, a crisp bell suddenly rang. Ding, ding, ding. The bell signaling the end of class rang through the entire corridor. The originally quiet school instantly became noisy. I'll deal with you next time. Just you wait. She glared fiercely at Ohei Shurdao, then turned around and left arrogantly. Everyone in the class looked at this proud girl in shock. Remembering Dustless's orders, Nightblade God 10 Incense skipped away. This guy, seeing Toka's figure, Itsuka Shido breathed a sigh of relief and muttered gloomily, is it because of what happened last time that she's so hostile toward me? When Nightblade God 10 Incense first came to this world, Kotori asked Itsuka Shido to talk to Nightblade God 10 Incense. However, Shido's luck was not good. Dustless happened to attack Nightblade God 10 Incense at that time, and Nightblade God 10 Incense, who didn't know it, put the blame on Itsuka Shido. Therefore, when the two sides met, there was a strong smell of gunpowder. If it wasn't for Dustless at that time, Itsuka Shido might have died. In the sports office. You silly girl. Wu Chun looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense speechlessly and scolded angrily. I asked you to get Kite Origami's words and ask where the Forfune is. I didn't ask you to come to me now. Dustless didn't know whether to laugh or cry. He shouldn't have asked such a serious question to Nightblade God 10 Incense. If she didn't do it right, Nightblade God 10 Incense might find out what she said. Forget it, I'll just find a chance to extract Nightblade God 10 Incense's memory. Dustless waved his hand and looked at Nightblade God 10 Incense impatiently. Go back to class, Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll take care of Nightblade God 10 Incense. I'll be your new teacher in the next PE class. Don't be late. Suddenly, Nightblade God 10 Incense opened her mouth and looked at Dustless expectantly. Shouldn't it be? Seeing this, the corner of Wu Chen's mouth twitched. He scolded angrily. Little girl, don't tell me you starved to death in your previous life. You just finished your breakfast not long ago, right? Can you eat so much? You let me work, but you don't give me food. This is called docking the wages of laborers. I can sue you. Nightblade God 10 Incense said seriously with a pout. Even laborers come out. As an elf, you really keep up with the times. Did you give her all these? Dustless looked at Murasame Rain gloomily, and the latter just shook her head in a daze. It seemed that she was about to fall asleep. Forget it, take it. Pointing to the transparent belt on the table, which was full of lunchboxes and various snacks, Dustless sighed. As for Night Blade God 10 incense, I'll do it. Dustless's eyes narrowed. He just needed to find a suitable opportunity to extract her memory. In this way, he could find the whereabouts of Shinoichi Origami. Dustless could also retire from this school. The ability of Rinnegan could extract the memory of others, but it would only hurt the soul of the other party. But after several years of use, Dustless's control of Rinnegan had reached an incredible level. Even if he used the eye power to search the other party's memory, it would not hurt their soul. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 evaluation votes plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2090. Ding, ding, ding. The bell rang, signaling the start of class. The noisy school quieted down once again. The spacious field was filled with people, including Dustless and a few other familiar faces. You're on time. Dustless walked over from afar with a frivolous and lazy expression. He held his head in his hands and held a blade of grass in his mouth. He wore a white tracksuit and had a faint smile on his face. Compared to the teacher, Dustless looked more like he was taking a stroll. This new PE teacher is actually late for his first class. Does he even care about us? He's not serious at all. The bell rang for 5 minutes, but Dustless was still nowhere to be seen. This caused a group of students to be dissatisfied, and they all started to complain. A bunch of brats are dissatisfied with me. A teasing tone suddenly brushed past everyone's ears. Everyone subconsciously looked over, and a young face entered everyone's ears. Dustless. A few people who knew Dustless were shocked. For example, Tabichi Origami and Itoka Shido were also in disbelief. Today is really strange. Itoka, Shido muttered. Shido muttered himself. 2 strange transfer students came out of nowhere, and even Wu-chan entered this school and became a teacher. The 2 transfer students were naturally Toka and Tokisaki Kurumi. This is really interesting. Tokisaki Kurumi tilted her head with a strange light in her eyes. How dare you be dissatisfied with your teacher? Now, run 10 laps around the field. Dustless ordered seriously. In his previous life, he envied teachers who gave orders. Are you kidding? The students all stared at Dustless with their eyes wide open. Although they were dissatisfied, they still ran. Many girls ran over to Dustless to ask for leave. Dustless also nodded in agreement. After all, they were on a menstrual cycle. He couldn't just ignore it. Why did you refuse my leave? Dustless, you must have done it on purpose. Yidao Shunshirxiang glared at Dustless. Her perfect face was filled with displeasure. Other girls could take leave, but she couldn't. How preposterous. Everyone is different, Yizichin said. Dustless glanced at Night Blade God Toka and said seriously, unless your period comes, I can give you time to rest. What's menstruation? Night Blade God Toka was confused. How dare you ask for leave when you don't even know this? Dustless rolled his eyes and pointed at the field. Night Blade God 10 fragrances, just run 20 laps around the field. How dare you? 25 laps. I don't want a 30 laps then. Dustless, you win. Just wait and see. Night Blade God 10 fragrances stomped her feet. She looked like she wanted to swallow Dustless alive. However, she gave in the end. Dustless was her teacher, and she wasn't as strong as Dustless. Night Blade God 10 fragrances once disobeyed Dustless's orders. The consequences were disastrous. After Dustless suppressed her, she was stripped naked and exposed for hours. Although it was at home, Night Blade God 10 fragrances still lost face. From then on, Dustless began to threaten her. If she disobeyed, he would strip her naked and throw her clothes on the street. Since then, Night Blade God 10 fragrances didn't dare to disobey Dustless's orders. Although his methods were despicable, the effect was unparalleled. Nightblade God 10 Fragrances never disobeyed Dustless's orders again. "What are you doing here?" Tokazaki-san. Dustless lazily sat on the grass as he stared at Toshiaki Kurumi. He yawned and said casually, "Are you on leave as well? Are you also on your menstrual cycle? Do you have any evidence?" This guy is really shameless. Although she maintained a warm and bright smile on her face, Toshiaki Kurumi was cursing Dustless in her heart. Her period was here. What evidence did he need? Wasn't he just trying to make things difficult for her? "How dare you fight with me?" Dustless glanced at Toshiaki Kurumi and laughed in his heart. "Don't think I don't know that you're on leave because you want to get close to Itsuka Shido." "What period?" Bullsh *T. Toshiaki Kurumi came to this school for one person, Itsuka Shido. She dreamed of the day when she and Itsuka Shido would become one. Even so, Dustless underestimated Toshiaki Kurumi and her boldness. The clear chirping of birds could be heard from the blue sky. The cool wind blew from afar, and the willow branches danced in the wind. Since Dustless and Toshiaki Kurumi were so close to each other, some of her hair was blown onto Dustless's face. "It smells good." Dustless took a whiff and said subconsciously, "Teacher, I have proof that my menstrual cycle is here." At this moment, Tokazaki Kurumi looked at the dazed Wu-chan with a smile. "You can even prove something like that? Elves are indeed different from the rest." Dustless was stunned when he heard Toshiaki Kurumi's answer. Just as he was about to ask, Toshiaki Kurumi's next move shocked Dustless. Toshiaki Kurumi lifted her uniform skirt and revealed her white fat too. "Don't tell me." Seeing this, a trace of emotion flashed across Wu-chan's face. He finally understood how Tokazaki Kurumi proved that her period had arrived. Taking off her fat too, just because of a disagreement. This Toshiaki Kurumi is really bold. Dustless couldn't help but sigh. If it was any other environment, he could still accept it. However, they were in a public field. Toshiaki Kurumi actually wanted to take off her fat too in front of Dustless. Her boldness was enough to make anyone blush with shame. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2091. Her white breasts were smooth and flawless, causing one's imagination to run wild. Even Dustless, who had been calm for many years, felt ripples in his heart at this moment. Long stockings wrapped around her white thighs, revealing her flawless skin that was as exquisite as jade. Under the black stockings, her jade-like legs were faintly discernible, causing one's heartstrings to throb. Unknowingly, Dustless's breathing had quickened. "You really dare to take it off?" His aggressive gaze circled around Toshiaki Kuzo's trousers. Dustless's lips curled into a rare smile. In all fairness, Dustless didn't believe that Toshiaki Kuzo would be so daring as to take off her breasts in public. Only an idiot would do that. But even so, for the sake of being on the safe side, Dustless still secretly set up a gray barrier to prevent others from spying. This guy, Toshiaki Kuzo, revealed her white breasts. When she saw that Dustless wasn't moved, she felt vexed and couldn't help but mutter, "Does this guy really want me to take off my breasts in front of him?" Toshiaki Kuzo was secretly depressed. She thought that it was just for show, but who would have thought that Dustless would look at her with such anticipation? If such a person could be a teacher, he was simply a beast in human face. "Student Toshiaki, how are you going to prove to me that your period is here?" Seeing Toshiaki Kuzo in a difficult position, Dustless held back his laughter and pretended to be calm. "If you don't prove it, I'll punish you by making you run 100 laps around the field." 100 laps. Hearing this, Toshiaki Kuzo's face flashed with anger. Her eyes clearly emitted a haze. Even though it was just a flash, Dustless caught it clearly. 1 lap around the school field was about 500 meters. 100 laps would be 500 by 100, which was almost 50,000 meters. "You did it on purpose, didn't you?" Finally, Tokisaki Kurumi could no longer maintain his composure and coldly said, "Brat, do you know how the word death is written?" Looking at Dustless's despicable face, Tokisaki Kurumi was certain that Dustless was doing this on purpose. "I really don't know how to write the word death." Dustless nodded. He looked at Tokisaki Kurumi and said seriously, "Why don't you teach me? This guy really doesn't know what's good for him." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was enraged. His calm eyes flashed with a savage light. He took out a spear and aimed it at Dustless. He laughed sinisterly. "Very well, I'll tell you how death is written. It's written with your blood." It was no wonder that Tokisaki Kurumi was so angry. Other girls could ask for leave if they were on their period, but when it was her turn, she had to strip off her fatness to verify her identity. How could you be so shameless? You're on your period and you have a bad temper. Shoot me. Dustless lazily slept on the grass with his eyes closed. He said casually, "Tokisaki Kurumi, no, it's more appropriate to call you Incubus. That seems to be your code name. If you start a fight here, it'll be very difficult for you to sneak into this school in the future. You know I'm an elf." Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupil shrank. Her body instinctively moved away from Dustless. "You're really forgetful. When we first met, didn't you take the initiative to introduce yourself as an elf? What a slow-witted girl." Dustless shook his head and picked up a blade of grass out of boredom. "How dare you mock me when I'm pointing a spear at you? You're just a mere human. How dare you?" Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi's expression turned cold and pulled the trigger. Bang! A large bullet was fired from the spear and headed straight for Dustless's head. "Goodbye, foolish human." Tokisaki Kurumi blew out a breath of hot air charmingly. A morbid smile appeared on her face as she stared straight at Dustless. She was enjoying the beauty of a dying person. When a person was about to die, they would reveal an unprecedented fear. This was also Tokisaki Kurumi's favorite moment. Poochie! The bullet tore through Dustless's head and pierced through it. The wound was large enough to fit an adult's fist. "How boring. At least let me admire your pitiful expression when you die. It'll be nice to have a memory." Tokisaki Kurumi was unhappy. Dustless remained calm until the moment of his death. Then, "Do you remember my pitiful expression?" A ghostly indifferent voice sounded out of nowhere. Then, a cold wind blew behind her. Fear flashed through Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes as she turned around and fired without hesitation. Bang! Another large bullet flew out and hit the bullseye. An obvious hole appeared on the head of the person who spoke. One had to admit that Tokisaki Kurumi's marksmanship was indeed amazing. Even if she didn't look at the target, she could still explode the opponent's head with just her intuition. However, the strange thing was that even though the person's head was blown off and the bullet pierced through his left eye, his body was still standing firmly. His right eye was still quietly looking at Tokisaki Kurumi. His breathing was even and he was very calm. His delicate face stared straight at Tokisaki Kurumi. "You're not dead." Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was several times louder as she looked at Dustless in horror. After being shot in the head, this guy was still standing there as if nothing had happened. Was this still a weak human? If Dustless was an elf, he didn't have psychic waves and there had never been a male elf before. What kind of monster was this guy? "Didn't you say you were going to teach me how to write the word death? Haven't you finished it yet? What a lousy language teacher. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates." Chapter 2092. I underestimated him. Looking at the lazy Dustless cautiously, Tokisaki Kurumi felt a rare headache. She frowned when she saw the gap in Dustless's eye, and her eyebrows were almost knitted together. Could it be that this guy can recover from any skill? Tokisaki Kurumi muttered to herself. Even though she spoke softly, the slick Dustless heard every word. "Recover? Wrong." Dustless shook his head and explained softly. "You've never injured me, so how can you recover? This is just the elemental ability of the glint fruit. It can ignore all physical attacks. Ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was the first to recover from her shock. Her first reaction was to laugh out loud, mocking Dustless for overestimating himself. How could a mere mortal have such a heaven-defying ability like ignore physical attacks? What else could it be other than the ravings of a lunatic? That was simply wishful thinking. Surrender, and I could give you a good job. Dustless's tone revealed a rare trace of gentleness. His expression was also very serious. Good job? Hearing this, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned for a moment before she sneered. You know that I'm an elf, right? Do you think there's any job in this world that's suitable for elves? Tokisaki Kurumi sneered at the end of her sentence. In this world, no matter who it was, they hated elves. After all, every time they appeared, they would cause a lot of trouble. They were almost synonymous with hate. This was especially true for the Eurasian air disaster that happened decades ago. It had taken the lives of hundreds of millions of people. Other people don't have jobs suitable for elves, but I do. Staring at Tokisaki Kurumi, Dustless smiled mysteriously and said seriously, I already have 2 servants, Yansei and Toka. Why don't you bang bang bang? However, before Dustless could continue his nonsense, a series of bullets were fired at him. Poochie, Poochie, Poochie. Just like before, Dustless didn't dodge and allowed the bullet to pierce through his head. If an ordinary person's head was smashed and a few large holes appeared, they would naturally die without a doubt. However, there were exceptions to everything. In Dustless's head, after a few seconds, the wound was covered by light and quickly healed. New skin grew. Damn it, could it really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi clicked her tongue. Her eyes were fixed on Dustless, revealing a look of deep shock. Why would such a godlike ability appear in the hands of Gigolo? Tokisaki Kurumi pouted as she spoke in a sour tone. She was like a jealous little wife who had been scolded. There are many things you don't understand, such as this. Dustless turned into a stream of light and rushed out. This damn pervert! Seeing the incoming light, Tokisaki Kurumi was shocked, and her beautiful eyes were filled with panic. Dustless's speed was something that even an elf like her couldn't achieve, let alone a human. In her panic, Tokisaki Kurumi quickly pulled the trigger again. Bang, bang, bang. Several more bullets flew out and pierced through Dustless's body. Swish, swish, swish. But what was strange and puzzling was that even after being attacked, the speed of the light didn't change. The dazzling light continued to rush towards her. Can he really ignore physical attacks? Tokisaki Kurumi was helpless. Dustless's body was transparent. Even if she could see him, she couldn't hit him. All attacks were ineffective against him. Damn it! I didn't expect to use my true strength to deal with a human. Tokisaki Kurumi was unresigned. She seemed to be unhappy that she lost to a human. After all, there was a difference between humans and elves. But today, Tokisaki Kurumi was teased by an ordinary human like Wu Chen. Especially Wu Chen's disdainful tone and unyielding attitude made her feel uncomfortable. She was clearly looking down on others. Being suppressed by a human made Tokisaki Kurumi unhappy and aggrieved. Finally, after gathering all her emotions, Tokisaki Kurumi decided to use her true strength to teach Dustless a lesson. Boom, boom, boom. Tokisaki Kurumi's young and tender body suddenly erupted with a powerful energy fluctuation. Following that, her outer clothes burst apart and turned into a black and blood-red dress. At the same time, a huge clock hung behind Tokisaki Kurumi's back. Is this your angelic form? Dustless rubbed his chin with interest and said expectantly, Your ability seems to be called Carving Emperor, right? I remember that you can reverse time, teleport, and even slow down time. How do you know so much about my ability? Who told you that? Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes widened. It was hard to believe that Dustless was making it up. If that was the case, it would be too much of a coincidence. Everything Dustless said was true. That's not important. Dustless waved his arm and moved his thumb gently. Bring it on. Little, is going to release your most beautiful light. Don't ask me why, because this is your best performance. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus more chapters, 3,000 rewards plus more chapters, 1,000 comments plus more chapters, 500 automatic subscriptions plus more chapters. Chapter 2093. Even if you want to be arrogant, you should know when to stop. Tokisaki Kurumi's eyes were filled with hostility. Dustless's domineering tone was as if he was declaring ownership of an item, completely ignoring the feelings of others. This arrogant tone gave Tokisaki Kurumi the illusion that she was someone else's possession. Repent for your sins. Tokisaki Kurumi glared at Dustless as she suddenly aimed the rifle at her own head and pulled the trigger. One bullet. Bang! Without a doubt, Tokisaki Kurumi ended up with a headshot. But strangely, the moment her head was hit, Tokisaki Kurumi disappeared without a trace. This is... Dustless frowned as he began to look around. Go to hell. At this moment, a black shadow suddenly appeared in front of him. Dustless felt a cold sensation on his forehead. He looked up and saw a black muzzle aimed at his head. This is teleportation. Dustless's lips trembled as a rare fluctuation of emotion appeared in his voice. Farewell. Bang. With a sinister laugh, Tokisaki Kurumi decisively pulled the trigger. Pucci. Since the muzzle was aimed at Dustless's head, it was aimed at his forehead. The moment the bullet left the rifle, it tore apart Dustless's head. The penetrated head did not splatter brain matter as expected. Instead, a large amount of photons surged out from the wound. There was not even a trace of blood, let alone bright red brain matter. Damn it! Seeing this, Tokisaki Kurumi stomped her feet in anger. As I said before, I'm a flash person who ate the glint fruit. I can elementalize. This kind of pure physical attack is just asking for humiliation. Dustless shook his head as the wound on his forehead began to heal. I didn't expect you to be able to teleport. Dustless looked at Tokisaki Kurumi in surprise. He lowered his head and thought about her ability before shaking his head. No, it's not teleportation. It's time acceleration. You know very well. Tokisaki Kurumi's face tensed up. She had mixed feelings in her heart. She wanted to cry, but had no tears. Her trick was seen through just once, and this feeling was truly unpleasant. But so what if you can see through it? Can you block it? Looking at Dustless with disdain, Tokisaki Kurumi aimed at her own head again. She was extremely confident. What an ignorant little girl. Dustless shook his head and sighed. Soon after, he raised a finger. If I wanted to kill you, you would have been killed 1,000 times within a minute. Under the speed of light, everything was laughable. You could try if you can. If you can stop me, I don't mind agreeing to your barbaric conditions. After all, the strong are the masters of this world. Tokisaki Kurumi charmingly smiled. Although her words sounded nice, her eyes were filled with contempt. She clearly didn't put Dustless in her eyes. Bang! Tokisaki Kurumi pulled the trigger again. The bullet from the rifle flew towards Dustless's head. At the same time, Dustless's figure gradually lost its texture and turned into a stream of light that rushed out. How fast was the bullet? That wasn't important. What was certain was that the bullet would pierce through Tokisaki Kurumi's head the moment it left the gun barrel. But what made Tokisaki Kurumi dumbfounded was that after a few seconds, she was also fine. Where was the bullet? Out of curiosity, Tokisaki Kurumi looked over. It would have been better if she didn't look. After witnessing this shocking scene, Tokisaki Kurumi's pupils shrunk. Her beautiful eyes were filled with deep shock. She saw a seemingly delicate arm easily catch a golden bullet between her middle finger and index finger. She shifted her gaze and looked at the owner of the arm. The culprit was Dustless. Swish, swish, swish. After being stunned for a few seconds, Tokisaki Kurumi hurriedly retreated. Fortunately, I reacted fast enough. Otherwise, I would have been killed by this guy. After putting some distance between herself and Dustless, Tokisaki Kurumi heaved a sigh of relief. You reacted fast enough? The cold voice carried with it a cold wind. Tokisaki Kurumi immediately shivered. This feeling was no different from falling into an ice cave. It was suffocating. Who is it? Tokisaki Kurumi raised her head in fear. Being stared at by this ruthless gaze, she felt like she was wandering in hell. What a boastful little girl. The cold voice sounded again, reflecting endless ridicule and disdain. It's you? Following the source of the voice, she saw Dustless. Your reaction is fast? You think too highly of yourself. In front of the speed of light, do you think your fast reaction is useful? I really don't know where your morbid confidence comes from. What a joke. Any move under the speed of light was futile. Child's play. Dustless threw out the rifle bullet in his hand. He crossed his arms and said lazily, "Carving Emperor's long needle and short needle are ancient rifles and pistols respectively. They fire Carving Emperor's ability as bullets. If the bullet doesn't hit the target, you won't be able to activate your ability. In other words, the moment you fire the bullet, I can completely stop it," Dustless said confidently. The bullet was fast, but it was still a far cry from the speed of light. This guy, Tokisaki Kurumi's expression changed. Her hair on both sides of her temples was covered in water droplets. If it was in the past, Tokisaki Kurumi would have treated this as a joke. However, looking at Carving Emperor's bullet on the ground, Tokisaki Kurumi couldn't laugh. This bullet was intercepted by Dustless. It was the bullet she fired. The moment it was about to shatter her head, it was intercepted by Dustless. If the bullet couldn't hit the target and Carving Emperor's ability couldn't be activated, then Tokisaki Kurumi, an elf, became immortal. P.S. 3,000 flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 comments plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. Chapter 2094. In this world, there was no invincible ability. Every ability had a flaw that no one knew about. It was invincible now because no one had discovered its weakness. For example, Dustless's glinting fruit elementization ability was invincible in this world, but in the previous world where pirates were everywhere, they could easily touch Dustless's body, such as armament hockey and sea stone. The reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could run rampant in the past was because she hadn't met a natural enemy. But this time, she was unlucky. She didn't look at the almanac when she went out and met a powerful enemy like Dustless. My chances of winning are slim, maybe even none. Tokisaki Kurumi was quite unwilling to give up. She calculated the chances of winning and helplessly found that she didn't have the ability to fight Dustless. Dustless's speed was faster than the speed of a bullet. In other words, he could easily defeat Tokisaki Kurumi before she used her ability. Blocking the bullet with his bare hands was the best example. I lost. She threw away the two guns in her hand and seemed to have accepted her fate. It wasn't that she wanted to surrender. The ability of Emperor was actually a bullet. If it couldn't hit the target, the ability couldn't be used. Kill me if you have the guts. Even if she was at her wit's end, Tokisaki Kurumi still bit her thin lips and looked at Dustless very stubbornly. She sneered, "If you don't kill me, I won't let you go and harass you for the rest of your life." As her voice fell, Tokisaki Kurumi's different-colored eyes flashed with a cold chill. She threatened, "Not only you, but also your two little servants, Night Sword God Toka and Yoshino. I will bury them with me. Harass me for the rest of my life?" Hearing this, Dustless's expression was extremely strange. He said sarcastically, "I remember that you didn't want to be my maid. Now you want to harass me for the rest of my life. You exposed your shameless heart and still want to harass me for the rest of my life. Shameless woman." Pucci. Tokisaki Kurumi almost vomited blood. She looked at Dustless with fire in her eyes. "If you don't kill me, when you fall into my hands in the future, I will make you beg for death." That's it. Although Tokisaki Kurumi's tone was harsh and aggressive, as if she wanted to swallow Dustless alive, the latter's reaction was calm. There wasn't even a trace of anger. "Tokisaki Kurumi, stop trying to be smart. Do you think I don't know your abilities? Dustless's cold face raised a bit of mockery. He said sarcastically, "Carve Emperor's bullet of 8 can make his past reappear. Although the doppelganger doesn't have a strength of the main body, it has its own will and spiritual equipment. It can be stored indefinitely in the shadow and can be summoned at any time before it is used up. This was also the reason why Tokisaki Kurumi could revive after being killed so many times." "Who told you all this?" Tokisaki Kurumi sucked in a breath of cold air and looked at Dustless in a daze. She naturally wouldn't tell a stranger about her trump card. So where did Dustless learn about it? Even if it was nonsense, it was too much of a coincidence, and what he said was true. "Who told me? In fact, it's very simple. Maybe I have the same ability as you. Maybe it's just a guess of our abilities." Wu Chen shrugged perfunctorily. Of course, he wouldn't say that he had transmigrated. "That's why I won't kill you. Even if I do, it's useless. You'll revive." Suddenly, Dustless rubbed his chin. The corners of his mouth curled up slightly, revealing a teasing smile. "Since I can't kill you, I'll torture you. What are you trying to do?" Tokisaki Kurumi's heart skipped a beat when she heard this. She knew that things weren't going well and subconsciously took a step back. "I can't forgive someone who is hostile to me and dares to provoke me. Don't worry. I just want to give you a punishment that you'll never forget." Dustless walked over slowly. Every step he took, Tokisaki Kurumi would feel an inexplicable pressure. She couldn't help but feel irritated. Bam! Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned when she bumped into something behind her. "This is Lai Chanhai's field. Where did the wall come from?" The moment she turned her head, Tokisaki Kurumi was stunned. She suddenly realized that she and Dustless were trapped in a small, transparent space. "Is this a barrier? When was it set up? No wonder no one paid attention to our duel." Tokisaki Kurumi touched the invisible but real barrier in a daze. The hard touch made her feel a little dazed. To be able to set up a barrier without being noticed by Tokisaki Kurumi, was it because she was too engrossed in it, or was Dustless just too mysterious? Could it be? She stared straight at Dustless. Tokisaki Kurumi stared straight at Dustless. Her eyes flickered nonstop. Girls tend to have wild imaginations. With such strength, could it be that she's the starter sprite? Dustless's strength was terrifying. He was definitely not an ordinary human, nor was he like AST's Tokichi Origami. He did not need to rely on equipment. Dustless relied on his own strength. Starter sprite? Although Tokisaki Kurumi's voice was soft, Dustless still heard it. "What the hell is that?" "I'm not, and I don't know much about it. I'm not interested in knowing. All you need to know is that anyone who dares to be presumptuous in my territory must be punished." "Your territory?" Tokisaki Kurumi had a strange expression. She looked at the huge field. Could it be that Dustless's territory was Lai Chanhai? "I'm talking about this planet," Dustless added after seeing the confused look on the girl's face. "All right, Tokisaki Kurumi, accept your punishment." As soon as he finished speaking, Dustless blinked to Tokisaki Kurumi's side. His sudden action almost made Tokisaki Kurumi vomit blood. P.S. 3,000 fresh flowers plus updates, 3,000 rewards plus updates, 1,000 reviews plus updates, 500 automatic subscriptions plus updates. You're tuning in to the Romance Rendezvous YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.